Okay, it's after 10 o'clock and we do have a quorum, so we could start.
Okay. Let's start. Good morning and welcome to the City Planning Commission remote public meeting. Brian Singer, the Senior Director of Land Use and Commission Operations, will now outline general information about the public hearing and how to participate. Ryan.
Thank you and good morning. Verbal testimony may be provided online or by calling in on your telephone. If you wish to speak, you must register through the NYC Engage portal. If you wish to access the hearing, please register through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. A link to join the hearing is on the landing page after you register, so don't close the landing page without first clicking on the link. If you are accessing the hearing via phone and wish to speak, you must first register with the dial-in participant hotline at the numbers listed on the screen. If one of the numbers is busy, please try again. The meeting ID is 618-237-7396. Press pound to skip the participation ID. The password is the numeral 1. The phone number is also posted on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. Please note that no matter how you are accessing the meeting, you must register if you want to speak. Those accessing the meeting online will have the option to turn on their camera while giving testimony. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be notified and promoted to a panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and grant you the ability to turn on your camera. Please listen closely for your name to be called. There will be a short period where it will appear that you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed. You should rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If you're accessing the hearing via phone, your name will be called from the list of registered speakers. Once your name has been called, you will be given the temporary ability to unmute yourself. You do this by pressing *6 to unmute your phone. For those listening to the hearing through the online live stream who have not yet registered to speak but decide they wish to do so during the meeting, you must first register to speak through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. It's not possible to testify through the online live stream without first having registered. The same goes for those accessing the hearing via phone. If you haven't registered to speak but wish to do so, you must first register to speak through the dial-in participant hotline that I described a moment ago. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes of testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials are accorded the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. If consecutive translation services are being used, the time will be extended to 5 minutes. And if an applicant team with 3 or more speakers wishes to make a team presentation, the team will generally be allowed a total of 10 minutes. The chair will announce when the time limit is reached. Please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Make sure that you're watching the live stream, that the live stream is muted before you begin your testimony. Otherwise, you'll hear an echo. If you wish to submit written testimony, it should be submitted to the Department of City Planning. Mailing and email address can be found on our website, planning.nyc.gov. And lastly, note that this remote public hearing is being recorded.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Good morning again, and welcome to the City Planning Commission remote public hearing. Mr. Secretary, please begin the meeting.
Thank you, Chair Lermont. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, all. This is the City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal. Today is Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. I will now call the roll. Chair Lermont.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Burney.
Here.
Commissioner Capelli.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Goodrich.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, December 15th, 2021.
On the minutes, I'd make a motion for approval. All in
Motion to
favor?
approve.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you.
Next item, Commissioners, is scheduling. Scheduling calendar numbers 1 through 8. We have resolutions for adoption, scheduling Wednesday, January 19th, 2022, for a remote and in-person public hearing to be held through the NYC Engage portal and in the City Planning Commission hearing room, Lower Concourse, 120 Broadway.
On this resolution, I make a motion to approve. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
But Madam Chair, on the
Any
resolution, I
opposed?
have a, Madam, on the chair, on the resolution, I have a question. Isn't this dependent upon the continuing order from the governor on the remote hearings? It expires on January
Yes,
15th.
and we don't, yes. We don't yet know what will happen with that, and that's why it's in the alternative here.
Got it.
So we will let you know. We are very hopeful that things stay the way they are, but we will definitely let you know.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so are there anyone opposed? Okay, if not, then this resolution is adopted. Thank you.
The next part of the calendar is the reports section on page 9. Reports, Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 9 and 10. CD 15, calendar number 9, C 200329 ZMK, calendar number 10, N 200328 ZRK. In the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 2892 Nostrand Avenue rezoning. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 9 and 10, Chair Lermont,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Just a comment. I certainly understand the department's valid position on Nostrand Avenue being a wide street, so I don't believe that this application warrants a no vote. But at the same time, I found the borough president's recommendation compelling, and therefore I abstain.
Commissioner Dweck abstaining. Thank you, Commissioner Dweck. Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
I'm choosing to abstain because I was not present for the bulk of the meetings which discussed the application. My first meeting was a few days ago, so I'm abstaining. Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner Goodrich. Commissioner Levin,
Well, it took me a while to get there for some of the reasons that were referred to in the borough president's report, but I think that building housing here is better than not building anything. So while I wish this weren't so dramatically out of context with the neighborhood, I vote yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 9 and 10. Calendar numbers 11 and 12, CD 15, calendar number 11, C 210239 ZMK, calendar number 12, N 210240 ZRK. In the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 2134 Coyle Street rezoning. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 11 and 12, Chair Lermont,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
I'm abstaining for the reasons I mentioned before.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 11 and 12. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 13, CD 5, N N220-210-HIM in the matter of a communication concerning the landmark designation of 200 Madison Avenue, first floor lobby interior. On the adoption of calendar number 13 for referral to the City Council. Chair Lermont,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Accused.
Commissioner Cerullo recused. Thank you, Commissioner Cerullo. Commissioner Dweck,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
I abstain.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
Calendar number 13 has been adopted for referral to the City Council. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 14, CD3, N220187 RCR, in the matter of application for the grant of a certification concerning Sheldon Avenue. For adoption on calendar number 14, Chair Lermont,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
I abstain.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
Calendar number 14 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 15, our last voting item for this morning, Commissioners. CD3 N210237 RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning 11 Madsen Avenue and 145 Richmond Valley Road. For adoption on calendar number 15, Chair Lermont,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Capelli, Commissioner Capelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodrich,
Abstain.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rampachat.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 15. Thank you, Commissioners. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 17. Borough of Queens, calendar number 16, CD7 C200122 MMQ. A public hearing in the matter of an application for a city map amendment concerning the Clearview Pump Station rehabilitation.
Thank you. Again, we ask those who are testifying to limit their remarks to 3 minutes, after which time they will be muted. And please also just let me reiterate that while we really welcome the opportunity to hear your comments, we ask that you employ courtesy and decorum throughout the comments so that we can conduct this meeting with integrity. Thank you. Okay, you may begin. We have one, it looks like a presenter for this.
We have, there we go. Alicia West, we're getting her into the room. Hold on.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can people see me? Can you see me as well?
No, but we can see your screen.
We can't see you.
Oh,
Oh, now we see you.
how about
There
now?
you are.
Oh, now
Hi,
we
everyone.
can. Now we can. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I will just hop right in. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Alicia West, and I'm the Director of Public Design Outreach for the Department of Environmental Protection. I'm here today to present the ULURP application for the city map amendment to allow for the reconstruction of the Clearview Pump Station. Next slide, please. The pump station serves Queens residents and businesses within a 1,000-acre drainage area, pumping up to 10 million gallons of wastewater a day. The station was upgraded in 2004, but it suffered flood damage shortly after completion. And the station's been operating on an interim pump station since that time. The reconstruction will restore the function to the permanent pump station and raise all the critical equipment above ground and above the floodplain to ensure resiliency and reliability. Next slide, please. In order to move forward with the reconstruction of the pump station, which is fully designed with Public Design Commission input and approval, DEP is pursuing a change to the city map to demap the portion of the traffic triangle where the existing pump station is located. That area is shown here in red, overlaid on the proposed site plan. Next slide, please. The above ground structure houses an electrical room and a generator room. Community Board 7 recently asked us whether the height of the building could be reduced. We have explained to them that the height of the building is set by the floodplain and the equipment housed within. Additionally, we have worked closely with DOT to ensure that the vehicular sight lines are not compromised. In fact, they will be improved by this project. Next slide, please. This section illustrates the interior electrical and generator equipment and shows how the 500-year storm floodplain, noted here in blue, raises the interior floor of the building to 4 feet off the ground. We have worked hard to make sure the structure is as small as possible, both in footprint and in volume, and I can get into more detail on that in the Q&A if requested. Next slide, please. This diagram illustrates that the proposed condition actually improves the line of sight from Row Place from 39 feet to 155 feet because the existing electrical equipment at the corner is being removed and the new resilient superstructure is pulled back on the traffic triangle. Next slide, please. The architectural design features a rooftop solar array that can generate 4.35 kilowatts of green energy in accordance with Local Law 94 and a high efficiency fiber cement panel cladding. This is a lightweight, highly durable and attractive material, and you can see an example of it here on the left used to great effect in Brussels. The renderings that you saw really don't do this material justice, and so we wanted to make sure that I spoke to the design intent and our desire to use sophisticated building materials and thoughtful design in DEP projects. Next slide. We will also have areas of permeable pavement to manage stormwater runoff and native plantings to soften the edges of the building. The design is complete with Public Design Commission approval and the contract is ready to begin procurement with the goal of beginning construction this summer. That's my last slide and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. West. Very perfect timing. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, and I appreciate the additional section drawings. I didn't see that before in our packages, so thank you. Just two quick questions with regards to the landscape and the guardrail. DEP will be maintaining that throughout its life, right?
Yes.
Okay, and well, the other question I had was, the borough president mentioned about trying to create 2 lanes. Has that any discussion gone further with the DOT with that?
Yes, so DOT has met twice with Community Board 7 and the council member also attended, I think, at least one of those meetings to better understand their concerns about the level of service on the surrounding roadways. And so DOT explained why adding an additional lane is not this easy or really safe solution to the traffic issues that are happening here. And they have committed to work with the community and state DOT to find a better solution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Burney.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Alicia. I don't know if you were listening in on the review session on Monday.
Yes.
But there was some discussion about the design of the building and reference was made to that other organization, the Public Design Commission. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty familiar.
And, some of the really, I think, quality design that came through for other DEP buildings and so on. So, you know, the sentiment was expressed that this really perhaps didn't quite rise to the level that we've achieved on previous projects. And I noticed in the slide you showed, you know, a building with windows, you know, obviously a lot of fenestration certainly helps, but there are other ways to skin the cat, so to speak. So I wonder whether we couldn't actually revisit some of the exterior treatment. And thinking back on some of the previous projects that have gone through the Public Design Commission, I mean, was there a discussion at PDC? Well, I mean, there must have been a discussion at PDC when this went through, and what was the sentiment expressed then?
So this project went through the typical design commission submission process. It started, took it through at the conceptual level to get buy-in on the design direction very early in design. And we had some conversations with then Commissioner Polshek, who was very excited about the cladding material and had some thoughts about varying the tone. So that's how we have that sort of, there's some darker gray and some lighter gray to sort of give it some accent and some movement as it moves around the building. We then, for standard procedure, went to the community board, got their input on the design. It was approved at that time. And then we moved forward with our design process. We got our final approvals with Design Commission in place around 2017, and then finished up all the specs and contract drawings, you know, in 2019, which is also when we identified the need to demap the footprint of the building. So at this juncture, the design is complete, and we're ready to go into procurement, and we do have all of our approvals in place. I hear you. And as I said, I don't think that the renderings that you saw do the material justice. As you said, you know, this is an industrial building. It's an unmanned pump station. We do have crews that go there every day, but there's not a need for fenestration here, which is why you don't see that. I think that, you know, DEP has a really great, a legacy of really great architecture, from our aqueduct system to our lesser known brutalist phase, to, of course, my favorite, the Newtown Creek plant. Right. And, you know, I know you guys referenced the Spring Street salt shed on Monday, and, you know, not every project can be the Spring Street salt shed. I mean, that one is pretty spectacular, but we really do take seriously the importance of designing attractive civic structures. And while this is a simple building, you know, we're using really quality architectural materials. And that's because we do strive to be a good neighbor and to serve our communities.
There was quite a bit of fencing. Is that mostly chain link fencing you're using?
It is not. It's a welded wire mesh, which is the preference of the PDC.
Okay.
So that's upgraded too.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, let's accept that the renderings aren't doing it justice, and maybe we'll feel better about it when we see it in person. So,
thank you, Commissioner.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Burney. Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yeah. One last question. I'm sorry.
Do you have another question?
Yes. What was the estimated time of construction for this project?
So we have a 2-year construction phase. We're hopeful to be able to begin construction this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Goodrich.
So I admit that I am, you know, these questions might have already been asked, so I apologize in advance. But my first question is, in terms of the specific Queens neighborhood, what are the ways that the new design project is either, well, I don't know if it works to combat climate change, but what are the ways that for the specific environment that it's helpful to the borough of Queens, and what are the ways that it might have a negative impact in terms of the environment?
So this is a wastewater pumping station, which means that it conveys wastewater, which can be stormwater. So when it rains or there's a snow melt, or sanitary flow, which is like you flush your toilet, you use your shower. That both of those flows of water are conveyed through the sewer system. And throughout the city, we have 96 pump stations all throughout the city. And those pump stations move that water to the treatment plant. We have 14 treatment plants in New York City. So this pump station conveys wastewater to the Tallman Island treatment plant. And as I said, it pumps up to 10 million gallons a day. So there's a there's a lot of sewage coming through. Should there be a failure at this pump station, because of the way that the majority of our city's sewer system was originally built out many, many years ago, it's a combined system. So if there's a failure, there's essentially the fail-safe for that combined system so that it doesn't come up in streets or in people's basements is that it go out to the nearest waterway. And so that's called combined sewer overflow. There are outfalls along the shoreline all over New York City. So if there's an overflow, that sewage and rainwater and whatever it may be goes out into the local waterway, in this case, Little Bay. So this project will ensure that that doesn't happen as frequently.
And do we know, there often have been concerns about, like, specific to sewage plants and other environmental issues, that if they are near, especially communities of color, that it disproportionately impacts them. What, if any, have there been any just points raised about that, and what are the responses to it? Because Queens, everywhere in New York is very diverse, but Queens is particularly diverse. So I don't know, well, it doesn't matter, it could be any community really, but I think what I'm speaking to is the term would be environmental racism.
Yeah, so environmental justice is, a really important concept to be aware of, right? There's a lot of infrastructure all over the city that makes it run. You are correct that many of the larger wastewater treatment plants are in communities of color, and as I said, we strive to be a good neighbor in any way that we can. And whether that's quality of life issues, like odor issues, we have an odor control task force to make sure that we're in communication with community boards about any issues that they have. We have a whole community liaison system, but also in the way that we build things out. It is important to be thoughtful about that. And we do have a rigorous community coordination process for that to make sure that those voices are heard, and that we can take them back to the design table, and make sure that the ultimate output is something that everybody is clear on, and making sure that we're addressing any quality of life issues that we're having.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions for Ms. West? If not, thank you very much for your time and presentation.
Thank you so much.
And I would now ask whether or not there's anyone else present who would like to speak on this item. Ryan, you can tell me whether anyone is signed up.
Yeah, there are no further speakers on this item.
Okay, then this hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank
Our
you so
next
much.
item, Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 17, CD3 C200357 MMR, a public hearing in the matter of applications for a city map amendment concerning the Amboy Road reconstruction.
Thank you. I think we'll have a 3-minute presentation here. Is Robert White and Nitin Patel.
Nitin Patel, yes.
Ready? Thank you. Okay.
Good morning, commissioners. Am I ready to go?
Yes.
You are.
Okay. My name is Nitin Patel, representing Department of Design and Construction. Along with me is Mr. Robert White, who is from AKRF, and he is going to walk the commissioner through this presentation. So I will yield to Mr. Robert White.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. So this is a project in Staten Island. It's a 2,000 linear foot corridor of Amboy Road in the Eltonville section, and it's sponsored by the Department of Transportation and Design and Construction. Next slide, please. I think most of the information here has already been stated, but the project location is 3901 Richmond Avenue, Staten Island. And it's Amboy Road improvements along the Eltingville corridor. And this graphic just shows you the full extent of the project, which is intended or aimed at improving the commercial corridor here. And the little blue triangle is small area of acquisition that is necessary to facilitate these improvements. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to quickly go through what the project purpose is, a description of the actions, a description of the corridor and the land use and zoning conditions. There was a seeker EAS and a negative declaration issue for the project, and then of course any questions you may have. Next slide, please. There's a lot of words here, but I'll just distill them down to the city map change for that little triangular portion. The area is outside of the mapped right-of-way at Amboy Road, and the purpose is to facilitate a realignment here because the intersection isn't aligned in a way that the geometry isn't adequate for what the improvements are intended to achieve. There's a really small area that totals about 120 square feet. It's a triangle. That's the total area. It's about 6 feet by 30 feet long, 6 feet along Richmond Avenue, 30 along Amber Road. In addition, with this lot, which is currently occupied by a Burger King, it's a commercial property. There's about 4,330 square feet that would be acquired, but that's already in the right of way and is already mapped. So the mapping is really limited to this small triangular area. And as I said, the acquisition would allow the city to realign this intersection so that it can be more geometrically appropriate. Next slide, please. Amboy Road, as you probably know, is a critical east-west transportation route across Staten Island. It's also a very critical and important commercial center for the Eltingville area and the surrounding area. And the capital project would allow the streetcar to be designed to DOT standards. It would facilitate traffic flow and turning movements. The project as a whole would facilitate accessibility to the commercial center here and would also allow for these landscaping and aesthetic improvements that would beautify and improve the corridor as a commercial destination.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you. Your team time has expired, and so I will ask the commission now whether or not they have any questions for you on this. Commissioner Cerullo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Robert, thank you for your presentation. So just a few questions, just a clarification on the geography of this. I understand completely the portion of the project geography between Richmond Avenue and Armstrong, but on the slides you just showed us, page 2 and page 4, there seems to be I'll say an extension. It's compared to the slides we saw at review session that some of the project seems to go beyond Richmond Avenue toward Tottenville to the other side of Richmond Avenue. Is that true? It looks like it's mapped out on your slides as going beyond Richmond Avenue. I'm calling it south. You're saying east-west. Can you clarify the geography of the project as it relates to Richmond, the point of the intersection at Richmond?
Yes, and maybe Nitin.
Our project will end on the east side of the Richmond Avenue compared to what is shown in there, because whenever we do the intersection, it does all 4 pedestrian ramps. So if it's going past that intersection, it seems like we will go up to the pedestrian ramps, which are across the street. So that's the reason it is shown that way. That includes the intersection. I
appreciate that. I understand what you're saying. So though all four corners. I want to ask you something about the sidewalk corner on the Burger King corner in a moment. But so the reason your line that encompasses the project geography goes to the east of Richmond Avenue is because all four corners
yes,
will have the ADA new required pedestrian
Pedestrian
ramps,
ramps,
corners.
yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. What happens where the little triangle is being acquired? What's going to happen going north on Richmond Avenue when you get to the corner? What happens to the sidewalk, and how does it meet the crosswalk? So what happens to the crosswalk as you continue to move? I'm gonna say north on Richmond Avenue, on the west side of Richmond Avenue at Burger King, if you're clipping the corner as it exists now. So what can people expect in terms of the experience of getting to the corner and crossing north?
Okay, as you see the blue triangle where the road is kind of swaying to the left, right? If you're coming from the majority and going towards the Richmond Avenue, the blue triangle is going to make the roadway turn left.
Yes.
So the Amboy Road, if you're driving, it would be a straight line driving in a way. At the same time, as we're coming toward Burger King, the corner across the street where the receiving ped ramp is going to be, that's going to be a little extended at the same time, meaning 5-6 feet of adjustment is required.
Yes.
So the roadway, it's going to be, let's say, if I'm moving to one side, then the other side has to align. So across the street, the corners are aligned.
Okay. And so I understand. I mean,
is that what you wanted to ask?
Yes, in part you're addressing it. So the crosswalk, we'll call it the pedestrian ramp, and this is a design issue, I guess. When you talk about Amboy Road being the same, and that this triangle is being used to create, I'm assuming, a better right turn off of Richmond Avenue onto Amboy Road. Is that what's happening? The corner is being...
It's more of the straight line from Amboy to Amboy, crossing Richmond Avenue.
I understand what you're saying.
To be safer, so...
Yes, the north side is, the east side is wider than the west side now.
Right, correct.
I got you. Okay, so that explains that. Okay.
Right.
And let me ask you this: what is the timing of this project? And how, when do you expect the project to begin? And then how long does a project like this take? As you know, and this is obviously an attempt to improve traffic flow and the pedestrian experience along this corridor. You also know, I'm sure, that this is a highly trafficked area, and what plans are in place to be able to continue to accommodate the businesses in this commercial stretch, which is heavily used. And obviously, as you know, the arterials, particularly, all over Staten Island, are few and far between, and this is one of them. So what kind of plans are in place to address those obvious issues?
Okay. The good thing is, this project is in final design, and it's a fiscal 23 project. So we will finish our design by November of 2022. And hopefully we'll get the contractor on board and construct in fall of 23. The duration of this project is about 2 years. And the good thing is, because we're widening the roadway, we're gonna take the advantage of working off the road and establishing the new sidewalk and the curb, and then take advantage of the new lane that was created to move the existing 2 one-way lanes. So the impact will be minimum compared to full closure. We will maintain 1 lane in each direction and then work on the other side So we will take advantage of this newly improved roadway while we're working. They will have a regular movement between the, between the two roadways, which is Richmond Avenue and Armstrong. And as for the pedestrian, it's like a sidewalk improvement job when you think about it, because we are going to be moving the sidewalks and curbs first. Having commercial in commercial district, yes, it's kind of slow. At the same time, we have to accommodate it. So while working with them, duration is going to be 24 hours. I mean, 24 months, sorry.
24 months. And I have
Yeah.
just two very quick questions. Do you envision at any time that any of the lanes would be closed?
Totally closed? No.
So there'll always be traffic in both directions?
Yes, with the occasional flaggers, meaning if the contractor needs to have something done right away, then the flagger is gonna help.
I understand, but it wouldn't be, it's not part of the plan to shut any of the lanes down. And the very
No.
last question I have is the project fully funded? Is it completely budgeted through the 2 years of expected construction? Or is there any
Yes,
part of the, okay.
it is city funded, actually, city and BP fund or something like that. I
Yes.
had to find, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the allocation is great. I just wanted to make sure that there was no, especially with changes in administrations at both levels, both at City Hall and at Borough Hall, I wanted to ensure that nothing slipped through the
It is
cracks.
fully funded, yes.
Okay, that it shouldn't be on someone's list to put more money into at some point, unless of course the costs would change, but that's a whole other issue. But I appreciate that. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Burney?
Thank you. Just a quick thing. Mr. Patel, you've been working on Amboy Road since you started at DDC like 45 years ago. And my question is, are you ever going to finish it?
We plan to this time.
Or I'm just giving you a hard time. It's okay. I know it's tough. Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you. Nice seeing you.
You too.
Are there any additional questions for this team? Okay, if not, then I will just ask whether or not there's anyone else present who would like to speak on this item. Ryan, let me know if there's anyone.
There are no further speakers on this item.
Okay, then. Thank you, gentlemen. This hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Commissioners.
Thank you. Appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Next item, Borough of the Bronx, calendar number 18, CD6 C220091ZSX. A public hearing in a matter of applications for the grant of a special permit concerning 660 to 668 East Fordham Road.
Good morning, it's Eric.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we'll have a 10-minute team presentation here. Go ahead. Go ahead. You can start. Oh, sorry, it's just a 3-minute presentation. Mr.
Hello.
Palatnik, are you ready?
Hello, I
Okay.
had a connection problem. I apologize. It just rejoined me. Good morning, everybody. I heard you say a 3-minute presentation. We have a team presentation of 3 members.
But a 3-minute team, is what I have, is that correct?
That is correct.
3-minute team?
I thought we were afforded more talk, 10 minutes.
If you have three speakers, then we can give you 10 minutes.
That's what I
If
thought.
you want to.
Yeah,
Sorry for any confusion.
that's okay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the time. My name is Eric Palatnik. We're here today as a team presentation with Jacqueline of Ackerman Centerfit, who did the HPD registration. And I'm going to mangle Jacqueline's last name, so I'll let her introduce herself in a moment. And also on the phone with us is Ben Grunwald of the architectural team. We know you had a lot of questions, and we're happy to answer everything at the end, and I'll try and address them during the presentation. The site, as you all know, is located within a C45D zoning district. It is in the Bronx. It's on East Fordham Road. I'd like to call to your attention at the bottom of the screen is 625 East Fordham Road. That property is the property that has the 45 parking spaces that we are obligated to provide on our site pursuant to a restrictive declaration. I heard all those comments and questions yesterday. That parking is on the property that's labeled site, and it's within the buildings and next door to the buildings. The buildings are hollowed out a little bit. And as you can see, the area is in desperate need of new housing here. And next slide. We are anxious to provide affordable housing, voluntary affordable housing, no government money. We're trying to race an HPD deadline for the 421, which you know expires in June. And what we've done to try to achieve that is we've already gotten full approval from HPD with everything other than a sign off to create 28 voluntary inclusionary housing units at 80% AMI. And we've had the building designed, we've had structural, we've had engineering, we've had mechanical. Every single inch of this building has been designed. We filed here to reduce the parking that's needed or eliminate it. And I heard your concerns the other day. We all did. So we added 9 spaces on top of the 45 spaces. And I'll show you that in a minute. On top of the 47 we're providing, for a total of 56 parking spaces. So we're trying to accommodate you. And we'd like to accommodate everybody's concerns. You can see here the building is going to be a beautiful building. It's going to be 115 feet tall. It'll have a fresh supermarket at the cellar level, at the ground floor, excuse me. And that's already been a separate application before your board and the community board. Next slide, please. You can see the building here. It's not a really good looking building. It's in a difficult spot. There's been no new developments pursuant to the C45D district done since it was in the last 5 years. I don't want to say since it was created. And there's been no voluntary inclusionary housing created. You look at what the parking lot is here and look at the site. The owner is a local gentleman. His name is Sean Davenchar. He owns the building across the street. He is fully invested. He's spoken to banks. Everything is hinging upon an approval from this commission. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You can see the site is right smack in the middle of everything you'd want it to be, in the middle of the Bronx Zoo, Fordham, New York Botanical Garden. There is parking across the street by Fordham University, nearly 2,000 spots. Next slide, please. That is available. You can see the neighborhood around here. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is the slide I wanted you to focus on for a second with me. The site is located right there in the middle. And you can see across the street up top in the pink, 685 East Fordham, private Fordham University, 1,530 parking spaces. I desire for anybody to go to try to park there right now. It is locked. You're not allowed to park. That building and that property, we believe, was, after reviewing quite a few documents, was approved by the City Planning Commission. And part of the give back was the requirement that be open to the public. It's locked. I'd also like to call out that the lack of parking, although a concern raised the community board, there was also a lot of internal personal issues between the applicants and other people at the community board that were longstanding, which is why you may not have heard the borough president echo the parking concerns in his report. And we know he wanted more units. Next slide, please, and a larger distribution. We know you did too. Next slide. You can just click through the slides right here. As you can see the site, I'll move fast. And if you can go right now to the slide that we're gonna have Josh. One more slide. One more slide, sorry. One more. I know you're all here. Stop here. This is the East Fordham rezoning district, C45D. I'm showing you this to show you not one single inclusionary housing development. This is the first one. We didn't come in trying to build housing, nor are we trying to build housing for Fordham University. We're trying to build housing that the owner and developer, Sean, really felt was the right housing. People in the area need housing that's affordable. Unfortunately, 2 and 3 bedrooms, at least in Sean's mind, pushed that income level and the amount people could pay over the top. That's why the unit distribution is where it is. If we could go back and change it, we weren't chasing 421, we would, but we can't. 421 is a state law. It expires in July or June, excuse me, when without us or with us. Next slide, please. And if it goes down, so does the affordable housing. Josh, do you want to speak for a second about, or Jacqueline, excuse me, do you want to speak for a moment about the affordable housing, what you've done with HPD to secure this?
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Jackie Scarinci from Ackerman, and we're representing the owners here on the inclusionary housing application. So as Eric stated, this is the unit distribution that we had prepared, worked with the owners on, and had approved by the inclusionary housing unit at HPD. There are corresponding plans filed at the DOB that have coordinated mechanical, structural, and engineering drawings that all account for this unit distribution, which has a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms. As the inclusionary housing program requires that we have a proportional mix, there is a proportional mix between the market rate and affordable units here. You can also see the rents. This is a voluntary site, so it's 80% AMI and below. And actually, most of the affordable units here are, on average, slightly larger than the market rate, the 1-bedrooms and the 2-bedrooms being slightly larger. If there are any questions, I'm here to answer them during the Q&A as well.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I appreciate everything you just said. And next slide, please. And again, we just want to show you now the building. We know that some commissioners have some questions about the landscaping. We have some imagery about the parking. We'll show you the quality. We'll pause on this image and just show you the quality of the building. We are not building cheap student housing. We're trying to build a building that's going to make a mark. The owner is a neighborhood person. As I said, he's operated the medical facility across the street for a decade. He's been involved in the rezonings. He sat in community board meetings. He sits with local electeds as time goes on. He did not mean to run afoul of a unit distribution mix, nor did he ever mean to get into the middle of a unit distribution mix desire and an HPD 421 deadline. And that's where we are. So please, we're asking you to look, as the new mayor says, his term, I love it. It's emotional intelligence. And I've interpreted that to mean to look behind the scenes. Not every effect is there for the same causes. We would change it if we had the time. We don't have the time. We still don't even have solidified financing. We're very close. And it's all hinging on everything coming together. Trying to get a lender to lend on this strip in this area for a brand new ground up development is no easy feat. And we're close, and the owners invested a lot to see that happen. Next few slides, we'd like to ask the architect to speak to. Ben, if you could speak to the layout and the configuration of the traffic and the landscaping for the next couple of minutes. Show the commissioners maybe how you get in with cars and show them what you've done at the second floor to add the additional parking spaces and why you're limited to just adding 9 more.
Good morning, Ben Greenwald. Good morning. Yes, I'll talk to that. I just want to say for 1 second what Eric said. Since we have been with this client, Sean, the only thing that he's constantly said is this building is designed for people of the community. The amenities are made up for people of the community. There's families. Everything is based for families of the community that work for him, and that he knows, and he knows what the community over there needs. Regarding the parking, if you go to the next slide, so this is the first floor. There's a fresh. If you'll see, there's 2 car lifts that will bring the cars up and down. There's an undercover. There's like a covered loading berth right before, so people could come in, and there's an attendee booth, so people don't have to park their cars themselves. They come in, they drop the car, and the attendee booth will take it up with 1 of the 2 elevators that is provided. The reason why we have 2 elevators is because we know that sometimes traffic could pull up. So the owner said that he wants to put in 2 elevators. So like this, there's always enough place. There's always enough people to take a car up and down, so people don't have to wait for their cars.
Ben, if I caution you, you have 30 seconds left, Ben.
Next slide. Over here, this is the second floor. You'll see we added another 9 spots. We added some stackers. So you have 25 stackers and 6 non-stackered parkings. So this gives us additional 9 spots besides the 47 declaration that we need for the other building. You asked a question about the planters. We heard a question, so I'll talk about that for a few seconds. If you go to the next slide.
It's right after this, Ben.
So if you see,
Your time, excuse me, your time has expired, but I will just ask the first question for you to just elaborate on the planting.
So one of the main focuses for the client was that he wants to build a beautiful building, something unique, something nice for the neighborhood. And he wants to bring in environmentally friendly, he wants to make it feel nice, and he wants to work with the environment. So one of his main things was to add a lot of greenery into the building. If you see on the first floor, there's a lot of trees, and on all of the terraces, there's tree plantings. I've heard a question about how this is done. So we have in the next slide, we'll show you how we're doing these plantings. Next slide. So all of these planters go into concrete boxes, concrete planters with special drainage, special soil that continuously feeds and gives water and drains the water throughout. This is something that we're doing a lot on buildings. It's done on most of the rooftops. It's a system that works, it's been proven, and they bring beautiful, amazing results. It brings in a green environment into buildings. It gives people that live in the building the feel that they have outdoor space with greenery, with fresh air. And if any other questions, I'll gladly answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Sorry.
Thank you for the presentation. I just had two questions of my own, which one was with respect to the additional parking spaces. If you're telling us that this addition is the maximum that you can accommodate on the site, I'd just like to understand that.
Yes, because there is, when you add parking, there's a certain, every stacker needs to have maneuverability as well. And we need ADA spots. So in order for us to be able to maneuver all the cars, we could only fit in 25 stackers. The 25 stackers gives us 50 spots. Besides that, we need 6 spots. 3 of them are ADA, and the other 2 are regular spots that will be able to be maneuvered. We have looked at this over and over again. If we could have given more spaces, we would definitely do so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Marine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric, Ben, and team for your presentation. You know, I questioned the entrance to our parking area, knowing that Camberling turning right onto Fordham Road going east is very congested at times, and not seeing a staging area but seeing 2 elevators without a staging area gives me additional pause, knowing that in the morning when staff is coming in to Olmed, we're going to have a bit of traffic on Camberling. And unless there's been a study done to identify that otherwise, I would argue that we're going to have some sort of a traffic concern, not at all times, but at times of where staff are coming in and out. So I'm not too sure how we would answer that question, but I just wanted to pose it. The second thing that I would argue is that, you know, you've made comment about how the building is designed for families, but you know, studios 1s and 2s don't lend themselves to family sort of setup, knowing that specifically in the Bronx, we've seen larger families. So I am concerned about the number of 2s and lack of 3s in the building. And so I'm not sure that there could be any changes made. I would also argue that this type of a setup lends itself well to, and I know you've mentioned that it's not intended for students, but we have to admit we have Fordham University across the street and student housing needs that are prolific throughout the community. And so I would argue that we will see a number of these units go out to students and become transient, and that's a real concern. And transient in a good way, not in a bad way, but you know, it's still a concern for the community.
Thank you. May I reply to some of your concerns? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So your concerns are well founded. There's reason to be concerned. You're building a new building here, and the traffic on Camberling, let's start with that, is an obvious new factor. I will suggest that the existing buildings there do have the same parking right now. We're not seeking to change it. The 47 spaces that are included in are simply being incorporated within the new building. So it's not as if there'll all of a sudden be an infiltration of new parking into the building area right now. That's not there right now. So, and I know nobody's really complained when we were at the community board about Camberling being overwhelmed right now. So we are just replacing like for like 47 of the spaces. I would also like to call out that those 47 spaces are not even that well utilized right now. They're probably at about 50% usage right now, which is also something that the demand is not as great as you would think. And that's primarily because, as we called out in our EIS, and you asked for a study, and then if you take a look at our statement of findings, we called out within the statement, I can look for the exact language we used, but we did do a study. We found that in the area, and this is all within the U.S. Census data tract information, that only 18% of the people in the community travel by automobile, according to the census data. And that's been provided within our EAS, and it's in the record on everything, and we'd be happy to expand upon it a little bit. The other 82% use taxi, Uber, and mass transit. And there are 13 bus stops out front, I've been advised. I might be off by one or two, but the owner told me 13 bus stops right out front. And there's a subway station about, I believe, about 5-minute walk away. So I guess what we're trying to suggest is, although it is a reason to be concerned and a reason for you to be focused upon, we have tried to address it within our paperwork. Also, you asked, can you still hear me okay? Is everybody still there?
Yes.
Great. Yes. I know. I'll try and stop talking in a moment. The unit distribution, it was gone into with good intent. The rationale behind it was that the owner, as you know, operates the medical facility across the street. People of all different income bands work there. He was trying to create something, and they all need housing. They all travel from far away to get to work, and he saw an opportunity there. It's not to say that that maybe there won't be a Fordham University student there, but the buildings are being designed with washer dryer hookups. The finishes are high end. The building is designed to look sharp. We are college students, with all due respect to my former college self, do not take care of property to the way that other people do.
Exactly.
And it's not, and I say that as a former, I don't know if you're allowed to insult college students these days, but but former student, I know my friends did probably more damage than they would have liked. So I don't think anybody is anxious to start seeing this building up as an auxiliary facility for Fordham, including the owner, who is local. I mean, he's not going anywhere. Everybody can speak to him. You can go in right now and walk into his facility and meet him, and he's a known quantity. So nobody's trying to misrepresent anything.
Thank you, Eric. I mean, I would still argue that the parking, and I'm sorry that I'm on the parking, but the parking as it is now, you're absolutely right. There's no congestion there because there's a big staging area when people come into the parking. So that's all I'm asking, to be aware that parking has a huge staging area where folks, even if it's 50% occupied, folks do have an area that they park and they walk away, they leave the keys and they keep going. In this scenario, we have only but 2 elevators. So I just wanted to be aware that it may present a problem.
There's 2 loading areas inside that can come up to it, but also they can control when people come out, so they can hold people from coming out for a little while, while people come in. So, and it's not really going to be that much of a rush. I mean, people go shopping at different hours of the day, and people come and go for their livelihood basically at very mechanical times. We can anticipate that. But I hear your concern, and I thank you for voicing your opinion and giving us the chance to reply.
Eric.
Thank you.
Can I reply just for a second?
Vice Chair Knuckles?
Thank you.
Sure, quickly.
So there is a staging area. Yeah, there is a staging area in front. If you'll see, besides the 2 elevators, there is a big staging area that 2 cars could fit, even if the elevators are not working. So there is a staging area, even if cars are in the elevator. And number 2, regarding families, if you look at the plans of the building, there's on every floor, there is nooks and things all designated for homework, there's a kids play area. The entire building is designed throughout with families in mind. I just want to bring that up.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for saying that.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, Vice Chair Knuckles?
Thank you. Eric, I just wanted to drill down on one of Commissioner Madin's questions, and that is specifically what prevents you from having any 3-bedroom units? I mean, you have 17 studios, which will obviously be attractive to students, you know, whether you like it or not. But so why are there no 3-bedroom units projected here?
The answer is not that there cannot be any 3 bedrooms. They can be created. The problem, Vice Chair, that we have is that we don't have the time to amend the materials and still make the 4/21 deadline. We've already secured everything up until a final sign off from HPD. We've been working, Jacqueline, who testified a few moments ago, has been working with HPD for a couple of years already. And I'm sure you're intimately familiar. In order to get a voluntary inclusionary housing program together, you have to have a regulatory agreement and everything else. So that all takes a lot of time to get all that into place. And if we changed it right now, it would push us past the 4/21. I want to make clear that we are comfortable with changing it, even though it would cost us money to do so. We don't have a problem with that. You know, we're sensitive to what everybody is saying. We're incredibly nervous that everything will disintegrate because we won't move through. It's unrealistic to think that we'll be able to get everything changed and amended, signed off, and into put in and foundations and footings in the ground in the time frame that's needed to vest it for the 421A. So that's what's holding us up, and that's why I mentioned that comment before about looking behind the drapes and seeing what caused us to get here. Sean really did think that that he would be offering people who needed apartments at a lower base level a place to live. A 1 and a 2 bedroom. He's seen that his staff right now and people that are working around him are cramming people into apartments. And
no, that's understood, Eric. That is understood. But as has been mentioned, you know, there is also a demand for 3-bedroom apartments, and I certainly understand that they would not be as numerous as the 1 and 2s, but you know, I think the absence of them is rather conspicuous. Secondly, at this point, do you have a commitment from a fresh grocer tenant type?
Yeah, C-Town has submitted a commitment letter. We've given that to your commission as a part of the authorization. That's a separate application, and actually, that's already been submitted and signed off by your commission, your agency.
Mm-hmm. So, just to reiterate, you say you are not precluded from a future consideration of a 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom units, not but some, subsequent to the 421A determination. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is this 421A makes it possible for us to change it. We cannot change it because it puts us up against so much uncertainty. We're still tethered against the bank is waiting to see what happens here. The bank won't even commit. This is not a normal location. You can't just walk into TD Bank and ask them for a loan for this property or Meridian Capital and ask them for a loan and have them all say, great. The numbers are very close. So the parking is being asked to be reduced because we're trying to get the most value out of every square inch we build. And the bank is demanding that. And the 421 is critical to that. And we need that to pencil in for the bank again. And as well as for the entire development, as well as to support the affordable component.
Yeah,
so
but I thought you said that there could at some point in the future there could be a reconsideration.
Oh, I was trying to communicate that we would like to. We would be more than happy to. This is not coming from a place of no desire, but our hands are locked and tied, and we're prevented due to the circumstances. This came to light very late. It came to light just about a month and a half ago. Even though we've been talking to a lot of people. So had we known about this a year ago, we would have been able to do it. But we just found out literally just around Thanksgiving was when this all came up, just when we were at the borough president's office. It was the first time it came to light. So it's the timing that's preventing us. And I'm trying to express that we're not doing it from a position of being bullheaded. We're doing it just because the economics and the timing. The 421, I'm sure you know, it's going to bring New York to a standstill. Nobody could build anything. The government doesn't really provide much for affordable MIH housing. So the 421 has been the lifeline. So the developers are scared out of their minds. And
I
so
understand. I understand. I understand the issue. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry it's this way, by the way. We
Thank
don't mean
you, Commissioner Burney. Thank you. Commissioner Burney?
Thank you. Just two things. At the review session on Monday, I was struggling to understand exactly where the second floor planting occurred and how one got access to it and so on. And I'm still not entirely clear. So could we go back to that second floor plan?
Yeah, Ben, can you speak for a minute? You're still on the phone?
Yes. If you look at the floor plan, there is on the second floor, there is a few units, and those units have outdoor terraces. And on those terraces, there are going to be those concrete planters to put planting in. And that's the detail that we've shown you. There's going to be terraces for the second floor apartments.
Okay, so those planters, they extend the full length of the building all around?
Correct.
Okay, and you're relying on the residents in the apartments behind them to maintain the planting?
No, we have a company called Clarapod. They install it and they maintain it.
But how do they get access without going through people's apartments?
It's a part of the lease agreement when somebody takes that apartment, that they're going to have people maintained like they do for mouse proofing, like they do for all of these things, that every 2 months the company comes in and maintains the plant.
Assuming somebody's home to let them in.
Or the super lets them in.
Yeah, okay. Seems like a slightly dubious arrangement to me, but okay. It's certainly unique. And then the second thing is, I noticed that both the community board and the borough president voted to oppose the project. Could you talk to how you've addressed the concerns of those two?
Yeah, hi, it's Eric Palatnik. Hi, Commissioner. Thank you for your comments. It's the same, the issues you've heard me discuss up until now. There are two contradictory reasons, or not two, there are two separate reasons why each acted on the application against it. The community board's concern was parking. I think you could review their commentary, and if you listen to the hearing about that, it was a lot of talk about parking. We've responded to that twofold. A lot of the talk at the community board, the community boards are very local. Real estate's local, and there's some personalities longstanding in the Bronx, the applicant being one of them. And maybe that might have stepped in somewhere along the way in some of the discussions. But at the end of the day, I show everybody this, there's nearly 1,500 parking spaces surrounding us, that there is on-street parking, and that there's also parking lots, including Fordham University, that was granted the obligation in exchange for a ULURP application many years ago to provide nearly 1,500 spaces across the street to be open. And our suggestion was that if the community and those who were opposed to our project on parking were truly concerned, then why is nobody recommending that the ULURP application be enforced for Fordham and that the parking spaces there be open? That was not responded to at all. But there are 1,500 spaces under lock and key, literally feet from the building, that's not open right now. And we've shown other spaces, there are other lots around us that are available. And we've also submitted in our EIS a moment ago, and only 18% of the ownership in the area of people that live in the area, own cars, is borne out by the census data. And I'd hazard a guess that in a building like this, that we're talking about much affordable housing and smaller units, really going to see that auto ownership bump up much above what the Census Bureau has been working on already. So I don't think the parking is already there, the 45 spaces, 47, that we're under obligation to provide, not causing any more damage on that. So I would like to suggest that I think it's a minimal impact, and we are providing 9 additional spaces, as was the best we could to fit it when it was brought up. We are trying to accommodate the request. It's just that building space in an affordable housing building that you don't earn income on, the bank will not loan on that so easily. So the reason why this section 74-533 was created, I believe, was in recognition of the fact that banks don't lend on parking is parking doesn't earn revenue. Banks lend on space. And in order to get a developer to entice them to take on the burden of providing affordable housing, you have to give them an opportunity to be competitive banking marketplace. And that's what we're asking you for. And we messed up on the unit distribution. I agree. We could have maybe changed it a little bit, but we're stuck there. So I hope that addresses your concern.
Well, it's not my concern. It's whether it addresses the concern of the community board, I guess. And
Yeah.
also the borough president, who had some similar concerns.
Yeah, the borough president was the unit distribution. I didn't mention that, but I sort of lumped them all together. But those are the two discussions. The community board had the parking, and the borough president's concern was the unit distribution, which is the policy of the former borough president. And I don't know if the current borough president is honoring that. I'm sure she is. But nonetheless, we would like to honor it if the 421 was not a real world obstacle to everything right now, which it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goodrich.
In my question is, in that area, there are not a ton of tall buildings, and it is right next to the New York Botanical Garden. So I have a few questions. The first is, will the height or the construction of the building itself impact negatively any of the greenhouses or the garden in any way? That's my first question, because there is one of the largest greenhouses there, and it's a Nolan greenhouse, and there's also a conservancy, and we saw something similar in Brooklyn. Well, not we, because I wasn't on the commission.
I know the project.
Time, but
yep.
All right, so that is my question. If any thought has been given to that, and then what's the answer? So
yeah, thought has been given to it. The answer is it won't have any impact, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I don't know if the person controlling the screen can go to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th slide on the screen that's got a picture of the site, the Bronx Zoo, and the Botanical Garden all in one. And if we get back to that image in a second, hopefully they could pull that up. It's the 5th slide. What you'll see when you look at it is that we are pretty much to the north of those locations. The second thing is the Bronx Zoo has some buildings surrounding it, as well as Ford University around the Botanical Garden, that are as tall, if not taller, than what we're suggesting here. So I don't know why the image wasn't able to load, but if you did have a chance to take a look at the electronic presentation, slide 5, it gives you a pretty clear picture that we're certainly not going to be the tallest thing around. There are definitely taller buildings. And as far as proximity to the zoo and the town goes, we're further away and in a different direction than those buildings are, which are taller than ours. So I do hear your concern. I'm glad you're raising it just to see if it was
you're muted. You muted.
No, sorry. I appreciate your concern. I could see why you'd want to inquire about it, but I don't think it's an issue for this development. I don't think it's going to cause any impediment to those institutions.
Let me ask a follow-up question. You said, we looked into that. It's been determined. So was there like an architect, or was there a specific expert who made that determination, or is the determination based off of the fact that there are similar buildings with
I wish
height?
we could pull up the imagery, because I think once you see it, it's basically very straightforward. Is there a way, Ryan?
Yeah, we can try and get that up.
Screen 5. I think that picked up you quite well.
We can try to get that up. Jeff, do we have it? There we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Which slide is it?
I think
Fifth
it's 5.
It's an aerial. There you go. Free right there. Beautiful. Okay, so what I'm trying to depict for you here is the first thing is everything slopes up a little bit towards the Botanical Garden.
Okay.
You could see that Fordham University, between us and the Botanical Garden, rests Fordham University, and it's quite some distance away. I mean, we're up very high in the sky here. Our building, of course, you can see here is to the north of that. And of course, the sun comes from the south. So of course, that helps also. You can see on the right, the Bronx Zoo is quite a distance away. And you can see the size of the in front of us, but they tower above us. All of those buildings that are sticking out are much taller than what we're requesting here. And I would believe, again, that all of this was probably properly analyzed during the rezoning of East Fordham, which was a sort of fight for victory, planning Department of City Planning, and that would have had to go on an EAS. There was no restriction put on heights of. Imagine everything would be a sensitive receptor, and then the full analysis would have had been done there. Plus, we did an EAS analysis as a part of our studies, and we're required to, and we received a negative declaration from the city's Environmental Quality Review Division, the division of EARD, from the City Planning Commission. So I don't think that's the basis, the picture, my common sense looking at it, the EAS that's been done, the past history of the rezoning, and the location of the property, I think all give me the confidence to say that I don't think it causes any issue. And I think the paperwork, we probably would have screened for it, I'd imagine. But I could triple check that for you also and get back to the commission.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, I think there was mentioned that the fresh market, which if it's the one I'm thinking about, it's a bit on the expensive side. It's a bit like Whole Foods, which I'm not sure if, it'll be really affordable for.
Oh, no.
No?
It's down.
C-Town.
Oh, C-Town. Okay. I was thinking of Fresh Market, which I'm thinking is sort of like a Whole Foods. My question on that is, okay. My question on that is, I don't know if it's already been decided that it has to be a supermarket, but since there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that that area is very family oriented, would there be any thought to something like a daycare, something that would directly address the family oriented nature of the neighborhood?
Listen, there is no the Fresh program. The supermarket is part of the Fresh program. That's the proper noun for the bonus. There's a bonus that could be achieved under the chair's authorization. So it is locked in, and that's part of, as you can see, following the theme of the building. We're trying to get every square inch. The only way to get it financed, it's no different than all of us. I don't know if anybody bought a car recently and see the VIG they put on the cars and everything. The banks are no different. The only way we can get this financed from a bank is if we get every square inch we can out of it. So the Fresh and the parking reduction are both an attempt to satisfy a bank and a lender to show them that, it's an unproven market. We're providing affordable housing. It's a risk. We get that. But look, we're very comfortable that we could pencil it out. So the Fresh program allows that to happen by providing more square footage, as does the parking reduction. And that's sort of the theme. Having said that, the owner runs a community facility across the street, and he's listening to you, and he's intending, as Commissioner Marin noted at review session, on building on that property in the future. And I'm sure he's hearing you right now about including a daycare, and might be able to do that as he's a landholder and a developer in the area. So we'll take that back to him.
Thank you. Commissioner Levin?
Yes, thank you. I want to bring us back to the matter that's really before us here. This building is as of right. And you have separately applied for the Fresh bonus, and that's before the chair, but has nothing to do with this commission.
Correct.
The only thing you're asking us to do is reduce the number of parking spaces that are required here. And as I'm listening to this discussion about unit mix and Fresh and this and that, it really strikes me that you're trying to avoid the parking that planning requires for financial reasons and not for planning reasons. Mm-hmm. And I find your statement of findings required for this special permit really concerning, because I don't think it provides us the detail that we need to come to the conclusion that you wish us to reach, which is that no parking should be required for the new units here. In particular, the finding C is that this is not going to have undue adverse effects on residents, including the availability of parking spaces for the users of the building. And you've given us no analysis of the availability of parking in the surrounding area. In fact, according to the materials that were provided to this commission, and maybe there's a slip up here someplace, there is no EAS for this project because you were found to be a type 2 project, not subject to seeker. And you keep referring to an EIS, but that goes back to the 2013 East Fordham Road rezoning, and a lot has happened in the decade since then. So I can't vote to approve this until I have the concrete information that the findings require. I mean, whether you have to provide it in an EAS or not, I don't know, but you need to give us more than the conclusory statements that you've provided in the statement of findings to satisfy us that it's appropriate to approve a building with no parking.
And thank you. May I reply, Commissioner Levitt?
Of course.
I could appreciate your concerns for that. We have tried to provide you with the information from the Census Bureau for car ownership for the area. We've also tried to establish for you the abundance of parking that within feet of the premises, so that if anybody was concerned about a parking demand that was not somehow not being met, that would somehow exceed the Census Bureau data and information, then there are hundreds of spaces available within feet of the premises. So from a planning,
could you show us? You need to provide us supplementary information. So maybe this isn't subject to seeker, but could you provide us the equivalent of a parking demand study with information that will satisfy it?
Yeah.
You can't do it here. This is more detailed. We need more detailed information.
Thank you. If you're giving me that chance to provide in the format you'd like to see it, I'm happy to. I was going to go back to the imagery of the maps and show you the spaces, but we'd be happy to give it to you in the format of a detailed analysis, and we can create that in the next couple of weeks for you.
That's good. I think we have some time in the follow-up, and it'd be really helpful to see the parking demand analysis for this project.
I would also call out to give you a little more comfort that when we spoke to the borough president's office, anecdotally, they were not concerned about the parking reduction. They did not see that, and the borough president is on the ground every day with these issues. So I do understand what you're asking, and thank you for giving us the chance to provide the data.
Well, the anecdotal is helpful. That certainly is, the neighborhood context is important for us to know about, but we can't be anecdotal about these findings.
We'll get you what you want. Thank you for giving me the chance to get it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will work with the applicant to ensure that we get this additional information. And I very much appreciate, Commissioner Levin, you bringing us back to what we really are here to look at and the findings that we need to make. So we will, at the time of post-hearing follow-up, aim to have additional information from this applicant team that we can look at with respect to this parking issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the commission on this application? Okay. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak on this matter?
There are no further speakers signed up on this matter.
All right. Then. So then this hearing is closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item, Commissioners, Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 19, CD5 C220102 HUK. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the Fifth Amendment to the East New York Urban Renewal Plan for the East New York Urban Renewal Area.
Okay. I have that we will have a 3-minute team presentation here. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can I start?
You may begin.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sushma Pramod from the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. I am here to present the Fifth Amendment to the East New York 1 Urban Renewal Plan ULURP application. Next slide, please. HPD is seeking an amendment to the East New York 1 Urban Renewal Plan to change the use restrictions on Site 122, located at 303 Hinsdale Street, from open space to residential use. As you can see in the picture, the site is an underutilized vacant city-owned property. Approval of the requested action would facilitate the development of a small 3-story new construction building with 4 affordable rental units, an appropriate use to its surrounding context. The proposed project would improve the vacant lot, elevate the overall condition of the site and its neighboring buildings, and bring additional affordable housing to the area. Next slide, please. The development site is an ideal location for residential development as seen on this aerial view. It is adjacent to 1 and 2 family buildings and across the street from a former shelter that is being redeveloped into affordable housing. Public transit in the area includes the L train at Van Sinderen Avenue 2 blocks to the west and the 234 trains at Livonia Avenue to the south. Bus service in the area includes the B14, B20, and B83 lines. Next slide, please. The area surrounding the site contains several open space uses, as this map shows. For example, the PS 328 community playground is located within 600 feet of the proposed development, and the Success Community Garden and an open space within NYCHA's Unity development are located within a quarter mile. Beyond that, there are many other parks, playgrounds, and gardens within half a mile, including Hands and Heart Community Garden, Grace Playground, and Livonia Park. Next slide, please. In consideration of the site's immediate neighboring context, the proposed development is a small 3-story residential building with 4 affordable rental units developed under HPD's Neighborhood Construction Program, or NCP. The proposed building will have a mix of unit types, including studios, 1- and 2-bedroom units, and will serve households earning up to 60% of area median income. Next slide, please. And finally, we're anticipating ULURP approval in spring of 2022, hope to close in the summer of 2022, and complete construction in winter of 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you again for having us here today, and we're open to any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Yep. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Birdie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I really appreciate you guys adding the map of local open space. And I'm hope that that's something that we can sort of build into the process, because as we use some of the vacant sites that we have for housing, which is obviously a need, we might be in danger of reducing the amount of publicly accessed open space. And, you know, the World Health Organization has a standard of 96 square feet per person. And we usually do better than that in Brooklyn because of the big parks and so on. But sometimes within neighborhoods that don't have access to a large park, I think we still want to try and make sure that within a 10-minute walk, we have at least some form of open space, just as part of our holistic planning. And I also hope that HPD continues its idea of neighborhood planning, looking at not only the housing, but also the support services and the other elements that make up a neighborhood, and that you continue to work with the Department of City Planning staff on a more holistic approach in general. So I'm very happy to see the attention to public space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the commission? Okay, then thank you to this applicant. We have one speaker signed up, Ella Levitt.
They are not in the room.
Yeah, we don't have, Ms. Levitt is not in the room.
Okay. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak on this item?
There are no further speakers. And also note that Ms. Levitt had indicated that she would submit written testimony. So we'll make sure that gets to the commission.
Okay, all right. So then in that event, I will declare this hearing closed, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item, Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 20 through 22. CD8, calendar number 20, C210386ZMK. Calendar number 21, N210387ZRK. Calendar number 22, C210379ZSK. A public hearing in a matter of applications for a zoning map, zoning text amendment, and special permit concerning 1034 to 1042 Atlantic Avenue rezoning.
Thank you. This will be a 10-minute presentation. Mr. Lobel, you can begin.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. I'm joined by Fan Baton from my office. With us is Kevin Williams from for Equity Environmental, who is the environmental consultant, and Nick Liberis, the project architect. Ellie Pariente, the applicant, is also with us. So we're here today for the 1034 to 1042 Atlantic Avenue rezoning and special permit application. Next slide, please. So the applicant here is seeking the rezoning of 8 lots, 2 of which are within the development site and would constitute roughly 24,000 square feet of lot area. And so the actions that are sought are several. The first is the rezoning from the current M11 to along Atlantic Avenue, a C63A zoning district, and we'll look at the boundaries of those in a moment, and along Pacific Street, because this is partially a through lot, an R7A C24 district, which reflects prior rezonings that have been approved by the commission. In addition to that, of course, given the nature of the rezoning, there will be a text amendment to Appendix F to require for mandatory inclusionary housing. Currently, options 1 and 2 are proposed. Third, there would be a text amendment which would provide for a minimum 20-foot sidewalk, and Mr. Liberis can talk about that as he goes through the plans. And finally, there's a special permit to reduce the number of required accessory parking spaces, and Mr. Williams is able to talk about parking and such, which he will do after I present the land use issues. So this proposed action would facilitate the development of the building, which is included within the plans, which would be a 17-story mixed-use development with residential units, commercial, and community facility use. There would be approximately 210 dwelling units, of which, pursuant to MIH, roughly 52 to 63 would be affordable. There is also proposed roughly 12,000 square feet of commercial space and roughly 2,500 square feet of community facility space in the form of a youth community facility center. Parking would be at roughly 20 residential parking spaces. Next slide. So you can see from the proposed project area several items. The first is that we are surrounded by residential districts. The Crown Heights West rezoning in 2015 rezoned much of the area to the south and southeast of the site to districts which range up to R7A districts. Of course, that was prior to the requirement of inclusionary housing. You'll also see that there are other rezonings in the area which have recently been approved within the last 3, 4, and even 5 years. There were rezonings along Pacific Street, specifically at 1010 and 1050, which allowed for R7A residential density, which is sought along Pacific here. There was a Pacific and Grand rezoning, which you can see in the boxed areas on Pacific and Grand, which allowed for R7D zoning along Grand Street. Now, all of these involved streets that were narrow streets per zoning, and of course, Atlantic Avenue here is a wide street. Next slide. So briefly, you can see the tax map here, as well as the development site highlighted in red, which would produce the proposed 17-story building with, of course, a lower massing along the R7A portion on Pacific Street. Next slide. The land use map actually really well illustrates why we feel this rezoning is appropriate, primarily because you have Atlantic Avenue here at 120 feet. This is an extra wide street, one of the widest thoroughfares in Brooklyn. And given the width of the street and actually prior city planning actions, as well as the department's presentations to the commission, the street width here is really well suited for the bulk of this building. This is a unique opportunity to provide residential and, importantly, affordable units in an area with excellent transportation options, which is close to retail and services and allows for commercial use as well. Next slide. So I think with that, if we can just page through the photos showing the surrounding area and the low-lying manufacturing buildings, the next slide with text would be the environmental review portion. And for that, I would ask Kevin to speak for 2 minutes. Kevin?
Thank you, Rich. Can everybody hear me clearly? Okay, so an environmental assessment was performed on the project. The typical type of impact categories were considered with particular reference for a project of this size. You know, obviously I can go to traffic if there are any questions on some of the other analysis, such as socioeconomics that was performed or any of the other components, we can do that. In terms of traffic, the project did not so comprehensive traffic analysis was performed. Having said that, in terms of vehicular traffic, so you only trigger what's called a level service analysis when you exceed 50 cars per intersection. The project does not exceed those numbers. A pedestrian analysis was performed because the project generates over 200 trips at the project corner. on Atlantic, and there showed no reduction in capacity on any of the sidewalk components. We also did perform a parking analysis. That parking analysis showed a comprehensive parking analysis for a quarter-mile area, including on-street assets, as well as a qualitative look at off-street assets such as private car garages. And what that analysis shows is obviously parking is constrained, but when we did 2 time periods, we analyzed in March and November to account for COVID. And during March, during the 3M period, there was 418 available cars of capacity in the on-street capacity within the quarter-mile. And during the November 20th at noon utilization, there were 71 available cars of capacity, and many previous environmental analysis have been performed in this area, and noting that even though there's no shortfall, this proposed development in particular would not result in a net zero capacity in the area, and car ownership in terms of this census tract is below 20%, and is tremendously supported by public transit assets. So, I think in terms of the parking waiver, the project can be supported, and that was concurred with by Environmental Assessment Review Division. There are e-designations on hazmat, air, and noise, and all of those would be subject and the benefit of the project in terms of making the units, soundproof versus traffic in the area, and assuring that the site is remediated in full. So if there are any further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And with that, we would go to Nick Liberis, who can discuss the project architecture. Nick?
Hi, Rich, thank you. Nick Liberis with Archimera. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is the rear of the building. So this is the plot plan over here. You can see that we're situated on Atlantic with 160 feet of a width over here. It's a through lot partially. We have a rear yard equivalent separating the main larger building portion, which is on Atlantic, from the smaller building portion, which is on Pacific to the south there. The C63A is a very interesting district for this project because it gives us something which is counterintuitive at first blush, which is that the extra height kind of lets you do something with the building form, which lets you kind of attenuate it in a way which like reduces the impact to the street. So this is something that beyond the land use rationale that Rich discussed before with the width of the streets, the proximity to all the transportation infrastructure, you have something which actually lends itself to a much better building massing, vis-a-vis the street, vis-a-vis the pedestrian experience. Next slide, please. So you can see here, the larger building, what this lets us do is kind of playfully push and pull with this massing in a way that reduces the impact of the street. So you have the lower building portion on the west side, which is to the right over here, and on the east side you have this taller tower element. So you get this point counterpoint compositional interplay here, which again kind of is something which reduces the impact of the street. Next slide, please. This is the rear of the building and of the Pacific building. So the Pacific building you can see here is 9 floors, 95 feet high, which is typical of the R7A, which is infilling this entire area. There have been several rezonings across the street, on the corner, down the street, and this is also generally in keeping with the M Crown plan that the neighborhood had come up with originally. So you get this infill development, which is typically 8 to 9 stories tall with a setback between the 5th and the 7th floor. Next slide, please. We have parking in the cellar. What we had originally set up was a community facility, a childhood rec center, something akin to like a Y, and we've been going back and forth with the community board for the past year, trying to dial that in. And right now, it's not certain that that's what we're going to be offering, but that's what we had been designing for about a year and a half. So we have this rec center, which is in the cellar, which is open to the first floor. It has a very significant presence to Atlantic Avenue. And the thought is that we have something that we'd be offering back to the community. This would be, you know, one of the more significant developments in this area. And, you know, it's something where our client Eli Pariente has a very honest desire to really make this, you know, kind of the heart of this neighborhood, you know, and there's something which is appropriate to that, both in the way that it's situated vis-a-vis the rest of the neighborhood. It's in the middle, and the way that you could think about Atlantic.
Mr. Liberis.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Your time is up.
Thank you. Okay.
We'll open it to questions from the commission. And certainly they can ask you to elaborate on anything. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Burney?
Thank you. I had a question about the mural that you show at the end of the building on one of your renderings. And I'm just interested, who's commissioning that? Who's the artist? How is that being processed?
So we've opened it up to the community. There's a couple of different muralists that we've been talking to. This is something that the client has been intending. There's some other images if you go further into the presentation. His intent for this area is something akin to the Wynwood section of Miami, where you have like a mural district. So in a building that we worked on for him a few years back for the previous rezoning that he did at the Pacific Grand. We worked with Lecombo's office to come up with a big mural that was on the side facing Atlantic. So there's a slide over here where you can see this intent. Every single building wall that faces, you know, the lot line has been muraled. So we're not exactly sure how long it'll take to infill the development for the rest of these blocks. So so the client's thought is that in the meantime, you know, we could really rebrand this area in a very positive way while also offering something back to the community.
And who's doing the sort of artist selection? Are you looking at local artists, or what's your process?
Can I respond, Nick? Can I address?
Yeah, sure.
So what we've done for the previous project is that in consultation with the council member's office, we did on the previous project and intend to do it on this one, use local artists. There's a consulting firm called the Bushwick Collective, which basically sources local artists throughout Brooklyn. And you know, what we did on the previous project is that which we would do now, is that we would run it past the council member and make sure that the art is cohesive with, you know, with the vision of the neighborhood, and you know that the art is appropriate to the corridor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you for the thorough presentation. I guess I should say it's not a surprise given the other applications we've seen along Atlantic Avenue. I've expressed some concerns about the scale of what's proposed here. I was not in support of what happened at 1045 Atlantic, and I have some of the same reactions here, but that's a question for judgment. I think you've done a good job of articulating the arguments in favor of this particular rezoning. I don't know if you've changed my mind, but that may not matter. Anyway, I did want to get your confirmation of the response to a question that was asked at the review session that has to do with the distribution of the affordable units between the two buildings. Can you confirm to us that whether this is done as one project or two projects, the MIH units will be distributed through both buildings?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Nick, just from a DOB and building standpoint, you can supplement. But the intention is to disperse the inclusionary units throughout both buildings.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and there, if it does, there's always a chance. I mean, yeah, I would say that that's the way that the zoning is written. That's you're basically compelled to do it. You have to spread it equally among 65% of the total vertical strata of the entire project. And people do try to get away with certain things, but there's significant pushback, and I haven't seen a project really succeed without it. So
can I add my comment to it again? Sorry, I don't mean to. But
your project,
on the recent project that we're in the process of completing, we realized that not only do you need to put it in 65% of the structure, it actually really helps from a C of O standpoint to have it on every single floor. So for C of O reason, it's really helpful to have it scattered throughout every single floor of the property. So I would add that it's more than just 65%, but really every single floor in both buildings would have a portion of the MIH.
Okay, that's great, because the whole premise of inclusionary housing is it's supposed to be included, and we're building mixed income communities, not only in neighborhoods but in individual buildings. So I'm very glad to hear you respond in that way. And then I guess, given our previous discussion about East Fordham Road, I think some of you were probably listening to that conversation about parking demand. I'd like to compliment you on the thoroughness of the parking analysis that was provided to us. It does draw my attention that you have a parking demand of up to 187 spaces, yet you're only providing 20 spaces and asserting that there is sufficient on-street parking to address the rest of the demand. That's something we'll have to chew on for analysis, but at least you've given us the information that's required for us to make our finding. So thank you. I'm a little skeptical about the gap in the numbers, but at least we've got the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sorry. Are there any other questions from for the applicant team from the commission? If not, thank you for your thorough presentation. And now we will go to testimony from the public. The first speaker is Peter Crashes. Is Mr. Crashes present?
I am. I'm here. Thanks for.
Okay.
It takes a little while to work your way into this system. Yeah, my name is Peter Crashes. I'm from the North Prospect Heights Association. I'm the current president. We are deeply concerned by the emergence of the individual private ULURP applications for Atlantic Avenue, and we call on the City Planning Commission to reject them. The use of individual private applications to unlock development potential on Atlantic Avenue undercuts the community's leverage to develop a holistic plan that addresses an eventual near doubling of Prospect Heights population. There are already 6,450 new units of housing approved for Atlantic Yards, Pacific Park. The progression of proposed new developments on Atlantic Avenue will add thousands more residents, and the impact on infrastructure must be considered comprehensively. The consideration of individual applications also fails to address the implications of indirect displacement caused by the introduction of such a large number of new market rate units. These proposals should be rejected, and we ask our next City Council member, Borough President, and Mayor to work with us to deliver a better plan. The absence of a transparently developed comprehensive plan lets city agencies and our elected officials off the hook and leaves the community with changes that can be in reality contradict declared goals. Individual applications cannot contribute in the same way to building a vital and healthy neighborhood. With individual applications, any benefits must be delivered within the property lines that are controlled by the developer. This is compounded by approval of districts that include property outside of any agreement because the property is not controlled by the applicant, and the need for the community board to offer development bonuses in exchange for benefits which have been defined by a few behind closed doors. Just look at the environmental study for each of these individual developments. Across numerous categories of study, schools, displacement, open space, the impact of each individual development does not meet the threshold for study. Yet we know that in aggregate, the combined impact of these developments will be significant. This is why we say the city is letting the community down and itself off the hook. And it is not the first time we've gone through this. With Atlantic Yards, which some commissioners are familiar with Atlantic Yards, the city let a private developer use a state process to escape any enforceable obligations it did not choose to meet. So we already have shortfalls, like 1,877 elementary school seats if the project is built in full, regularly congested intersections, and poor sanitation. Looking forward, an obvious context here is that the much ballyhooed public transit access said to accompany these subzonings on Atlantic Avenue is missing. Public transit access may be sufficient for a certain degree of density, but Atlantic Avenue simply does not have the equivalent public transit of similarly wide avenues nearby, like 4th Avenue or Eastern Parkway. One cannot introduce so much market rate housing into a neighborhood and expect to compensate for the effects of displacement using existing MIH options. The developer's use of negotiations with the community board over MIH options is a sleight of hand, which is unlikely to trade away any of the amount of square footage dedicated to unaffordable housing. And by breaking apart environmental analysis into individual pieces, even though a wide area is clearly being upzoned, the city is playing a trick. It avoids identifying the cumulative effects of all the new developments when looking together. These proposals should be
Thank you,
rejected.
Mr. Crashes. Your 3 minutes is up.
Work with us to deliver a better plan. Thank you.
Thank you. You certainly are. You're encouraged to submit your written testimony if you have more that you wanted to add. We'd be happy to take it. Are there any questions for Mr. Crashes? Commissioner Levin.
I don't have a question, but just a comment. So thank you, Mr. Crashes, for articulating better than I could the notion that we really should be looking at a comprehensive rezoning of Atlantic Avenue. I wish we were looking at a rezoning that would implement the M-Crown land use framework. And my concerns about the developments that have happened, this one and the other ones surrounding, are really rooted in the departure from the M-Crown framework and a desire for the comprehensive look that you just articulated. So I just wanted to let you know that at least one commissioner is sympathetic to what you just told us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Crashes. The next speaker is Andrew Wright.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Wright. I am the Director of Policy and Budget for Councilmember Crystal Hudson. I'll be reading the following testimony on her behalf. She's currently at the council stated meeting and could not make it today. Her statement is as follows. Commissioners, I'd like to thank the City Planning Commission for the opportunity to testify today regarding the proposed rezonings at 1034 to 1042 Atlantic Avenue and 870 to 888 Atlantic Avenue, which the commission will review later. As you may know, these two projects were certified under the previous council member with a timeline that made it clear her successor would ultimately vote on the projects. Considering this process left me without the explicit opportunity to be involved from the beginning, I cannot in good conscience vote to approve either of these projects. Further, our current process of greenlighting developer-initiated spot rezonings upon request has resulted in a patchwork of new residential developments that do not adequately meet the needs of local communities, are out of sync with their surrounding neighborhood, and have the capacity to greatly exacerbate gentrification, particularly in the majority Black neighborhoods that have seen thousands of residents pushed out of their homes over the past decade. As such, I support a comprehensive vision for city planning, not just for our city at large, but also for the 35th district, that starts along Atlantic Avenue, where we have a chance to foster a community-led process that will center our neighbors' needs. I've already asked the developers of these two projects to kindly withdraw their applications so that my office can be involved at every step of the process and so we can embark upon a community-led revisioning of this dangerous corridor. Today, I still oppose these two projects and strongly encourage Y&T Development and EMP Capital Group to withdraw their applications and resubmit once we've had an opportunity to collect community input and create a comprehensive plan in partnership with the Department of City Planning, Department of Transportation, and others that incorporates our community's needs for a safer Atlantic Avenue for pedestrians and future residents alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Are there any questions from the commission for Mr. Wright? Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker is Kathy Iceland.
Kathy is not in the room.
Okay. Then we will move to Jack Robinson.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Jack Robinson. I live at 1022 Pacific Street. This proposal is directly across the street from me and unprecedentedly cuts through the block transcontinentally from Atlantic to Pacific. I know that our neighborhood needs to be rezoned. It's commercial. and industrial, and we get that. I get that there needs to be more housing and that the neighborhood's going to change. New York City is not for the nostalgic. The vision of change is missing. The two Atlantic Avenue proposals before you are haphazard and lack the context and cohesiveness that our real Brooklyn neighborhood deserves. The main issue that I have is infrastructure. We do not have a comprehensive neighborhood plan where that calls for schools, transportation, and public open spaces and sewage, like the earlier pumping station proposal. M-Crown seemed like a big compromise weighted towards developers, and now that's even being more trampled. There was a very thoughtful plan that I saw for East New York earlier that really had everything put together in a space that could be understood and seemed very thought through. I'd like something like that for Atlantic Avenue in between Flatbush and Bedford Avenues. And the thought for on-street parking, there is none. I don't know if you can hear in my background, but 1010 Pacific Street, also directly across the street from the proposed project, is going to be taking up even more parking. And so, yeah, there is already no parking on the street. Without a comprehensive neighborhood rezoning, I urge you to reject the 870, 888, and the 1034, 1042 Atlantic Avenue proposals. We want development, a planned development that keeps our neighborhood, people, and infrastructure in mind. The developers and their lawyers seem to be the only ones that are succeeding in this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Robinson. The next speaker is Gib Viconi.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Gib Viconi, and I'll be testifying on behalf of Brooklyn Community Board 8. As several of you know, for nearly 8 years, Brooklyn Community Board 8 has worked to create and communicate a vision for the development of an area currently zoned M11 along Atlantic Avenue between Vanderbilt Avenue and Franklin Avenue and extending south on the east end to Bergen Street. This area includes on its western end lots referenced in today's application. The board believes this area, known as M-Crown, offers a unique opportunity to expand employment and provide affordable housing in 26 acres currently vacant or underutilized between two rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods of Crown Heights and Prospect Heights. Our vision won the support of the past Brooklyn Borough President and City Council member. But although there have been several private rezonings in the M-Crown district since we began our efforts, we estimate rezoning of the remaining lots would yield nearly 2,000 residential units with nearly 500 affordable and more than 1.5 million square feet of commercial and light industrial space. Unfortunately, and despite our best efforts, we have not been able to move the vision forward with the Department of City Planning as a neighborhood rezoning. The long wait has fueled a speculative market for land in the M-Crown district, which reduces the opportunity to cross-subsidize affordable housing and new light industrial uses. So although our strong preference is a neighborhood rezoning, we find ourselves compelled to work with private applicants bringing proposals like the one before us today. In the present case, the Community Board has resolved to support these applications if the applicant enters into a binding commitment to provide a minimum of 5,400 square feet for light industrial uses consistent with the M-Crown vision, to offer required affordable housing under MIH option 3, to limit total FAR to 7.2, and to limit building height on Atlantic Avenue to 15 stories. The board finds the greater density along Avenue relative to its M-Crown resolution is justified, given the opportunity for light industrial use beyond what would have been envisioned under M-Crown, and for deeply affordable housing in a community district that continues to undergo intense gentrification and displacement. Finally, I would point out that the applicant has engaged with the Community Board in a similar commitment for rezoned property in the M-Crown district. We hope the willingness of applicants like EMP to work with Brooklyn Community Board 8 will encourage the new administration to put aside concerns about the economic viability of the M-Crown vision and to move forward with us on a neighborhood rezoning. In the expectation of such an action, the board recommends that Lot 40 be removed from this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vacconi. Are there any questions from the commission for Mr. Vacconi? Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker is Renzo Ramirez.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Good afternoon, Chair Lamont and members of the commission. My name is Renzo Ramirez and I am a member of 32BJ SEIU, here on behalf of the more than 85,000 32BJ members to express our support for this project. We are pleased to announce that the developer, EMP Capital, has reached out early to make a credible commitment to providing prevailing wage jobs to the future building service workers at the site. These jobs are typically filled by local members of the community, and because of this commitment, will pay family-sustaining wages, which help bring working families into the middle class. These apartments are needed for working people in Brooklyn. This commitment to good prevailing wage jobs will give opportunity for upward mobility, security, and dignity to working class families. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. We know that this development will continue to uphold the industry standard and provide opportunities for working families to thrive. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you for your time. The next speaker is Michael Rogers. Okay. Mr. Rogers, you may begin.
Thank you. Although I think I'm going to delay my comments until we get to the 870, 888 property. So I'll just wait my time till then. Thank you.
Okay. We'll make sure that you're signed, you're registered for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. The next speaker is Katja Kuhl.
Hi, everyone. It's Kaya. Thanks, Chair Lamont, for the opportunity to speak. So as I just said, my name is Kaya Kuhl. I'm a resident of the neighborhood. I'm also an urban planner. I began my career in the Manhattan office at City Planning, and I now specialize in community engagement. And several speakers have spoken very eloquently before me, including Commissioner Levin, about the need for a more comprehensive plan for the neighborhood. And I just wanted to add some thoughts to this. In light of our current condition, you all have beautiful blue backgrounds behind you, but I'm assuming most of you are at home. And so I'm not a member of the community board, but I watched about 10 to 15 hours of meetings. So the community board did spend, or the land use committee, I should say, spend a lot of time trying to deliberate this and the 870, 888 Atlantic project. But what I saw is a process that is really challenged, where at times the majority of the meeting was taken up by discussing why a chat function was disabled or not, and the discussion was around whether or not this project and the other one should be rejected outright in lieu of a neighborhood rezoning, as you heard before. And so I would just urge you to consider what was read as the newly elected council members' proposal, that there wasn't really a fair and transparent process. It is really difficult for all of us to do that. But it is also really difficult for all of us to, at this current time, do business as usual, make assumption about what's right for this city, what's right for this corridor. We hear about public transit and job centers where the only public transit option here currently is really the C train, which was always the worst line in the city pre-pandemic, and we simply don't know what we need from a post-pandemic public transportation system. So I urge you to consider that we as a community need more time to evaluate what our goals for this neighborhood are, and private applications are currently taking advantage of this vacuum of decision making. So I support what Mr. Crash has said, that as a neighbor who works and lives in this neighborhood, I would prefer a comprehensive plan for Atlantic Avenue that can take into account all these things that weren't thoroughly studied in the EASs of the various projects. And we will see development that can work for this neighborhood in a better way than individual applications can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry about your name, Ms. Kuehl. Are there any questions for Ms. Kuehl? Well, thank you very much for your testimony. The next speaker is Ella Levitt.
Ella is not in the room.
Thank you. Then we have Fletcher Kohlhausen. Is he in the room?
Fletcher is not in the room.
Mr. Kohlhausen is not in the room.
Okay, so then I will ask whether or not there is anyone else present that would like to be heard on this matter.
There are no further speakers on this item.
So then this hearing is closed. Thank you.
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 23 through 25. Our last hearing item for this morning, commissioners. CD8, calendar number 23, C210335ZMK. Calendar number 24, N210336ZRK. Calendar number 25, C210260ZSK. A public hearing in a matter of applications for a zoning map, zoning text amendment, and special permit concerning 870 to 888 Atlantic Avenue rezoning.
Thank you. This will be a 10-minute team presentation. Mr. Lobel, you may begin.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, again, good afternoon. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the applicant. I'm joined by Fan Baton from my office, as well as Sandy Hornick, a land use consultant to our office. Noah Bernstein from AKRF will address environmental and parking concerns. And Nick Liberis is the project architect. We're also, of course, joined by Joel Teitelbaum, the project applicant. So this is for the 870 to 888 Atlantic Avenue rezoning and special permit. Next slide. To summarize the project, we seek 4 actions. The first would be for a rezoning of 7 lots, inclusive of the project area and the development site, which is 20,000 square feet, from an existing M11 district to a C63A district with an equivalent of R9A zoning. Of course, a text amendment would also be sought. Currently, the iteration included option 2 and workforce, although this more recent discussions have centered around options 1 and 3. A text amendment would be sought to provide for a 20-foot minimum sidewalk width and a special permit to reduce the number of parking spaces, again, which will be addressed by the remainder of the applicant team. The result here would produce a 17-story mixed-use residential, commercial, and community facility building with approximately 228 dwelling units and 228 dwelling units, of which roughly 69 to 70 would be permanently affordable, as well as local retail. Next slide. So this is a similarly situated rezoning. This rezoning would be along Atlantic. A primary difference is the prior rezoning at 840 Atlantic Avenue, the development site and project area of which lies immediately to the west of this site. So in addition to understanding the history of rezonings in Community Board 8, particularly the R7A districts approved along Pacific in 1010 and 1050, as well as the R7D in Grand and Pacific, now you have the immediate precedent of a C63X combined district, which also included other elements on Atlantic Avenue here, further supporting the land use rationale for the C63A requested at the site. Next slide. So this is a tax map which demonstrates the bifurcated project area, the 20,000 square foot development site on the eastern portion highlighted in red, with the remaining non-applicant controlled sites on the west. We note here that in line with the M11, development along the project area and, in a larger sense has really reflected low scale commercial manufacturing buildings, including self-storage facilities, of which there are several within the surrounding 3 blocks, as well as just existing non-conforming residential use in low-lying buildings and ground floor commercial. But really here what you're doing is you're taking open parking and vacant uses and creating something which was sought by the entire community, which is A, residential units and primarily affordable units, and B, additional retail uses. Next slide. So I would just conclude with the area map, which again supports the rationale for the rezoning. You've got Atlantic Avenue here at 120 feet wide. Across the street, you see the R9 that was rezoned as part of rezoning along Vanderbilt and Clinton Avenues. So the additional density here on Atlantic Avenue is particularly appropriate. Of course, we've had conversations previously with the community board, has been noted, as well as the Brooklyn Borough President on modifications and changes to the building, which would allow for additional contextual changes. And those are currently in process. But we do recognize the importance of this rezoning and the opportunity now to create these units absent a larger area-wide rezoning, which again has not been forthcoming. Next slide. So with that, we would just show the several slides, and if you want to just page through the 2 pages of pictures, you can see the existing low-lying auto sales shops, vacant uses, buildings which produce relatively low floor area. And with that, I would defer to Noah, who can discuss some environmental issues. Noah?
Good afternoon, Noah Bernstein of 8KRF, environmental consultant for the applicant. I'll just provide a quick overview of the environmental review for this project. An EAS, environmental assessment statement, was prepared following seeker guidelines to assess the potential for significant adverse impacts associated with the proposed actions. Each of the 19 subject areas under seeker were assessed, and while some were addressed with screening analyses, 10 subject areas were requiring further assessment, and these are listed on the slide. Additionally, since the proposed actions include a special permit for a parking reduction, a parking demand analysis was conducted as part of the transportation assessment. And this analysis demonstrated that there is sufficient capacity nearby parking facilities to accommodate the proposed actions, parking demand, and that reducing the proposed parking would not result in a parking shortfall. Overall, none of the technical analyses identified significant adverse impacts. Additionally, an E-designation would be established for the project site and adjacent projected development sites in the project area to ensure that the proposed actions would not result in significant adverse impacts related to hazardous materials, air quality, and noise. With these controls in place, the Department of City Planning found the proposed actions would not have significant adverse impact on the environment, and the department issued a negative declaration on the EAS in September 2021. I'll now turn the presentation over to Nicholas Liveris, the project architect, but I'm available to answer any questions on the environmental review and the EAS. Thank you.
Nick, you're on mute.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Noah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so you can see that this building is on an lot on Atlantic Avenue. It's about 200 feet wide, 100 feet deep. It's very close to downtown Brooklyn, and it's very close to the Atlantic Yards projects, which are about one block away. Next slide, please. This is the proposed massing. There's a similar massing strategy to the 1042 project in that we are using the C63A to disaggregate the building form in a way which reduces the impact to the street. Next slide, please. This is the cellar floor. We have 40 parking spaces proposed. We have on the ground floor about 2,500 square foot and then 1,500 exterior square foot area, which has been set aside for M Crown. This links to a cellar space, which is about 2,500 to 5,000 square feet, depending on the tenant. This was always a very critical thing to the building form and to the facade, because we were always thinking about ways to incorporate and express the M Crown use in the building in a way that was engaging. We had engaged originally with a local gallery, and the thought was that we could incorporate stuff that they were promoting into the building facade. So to that end, we had two vitrine-like objects. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. To the renderings, please. Can we go to the renderings? Are there not any renderings? Doesn't seem to be any renderings. Okay, so if you go back to the last slide, please. So you can see here that there are these two vertical objects that are from the ground floor up until the 5th floor. The intent was to have something to display art of many types of media, which could be swapped out. So it would be a curated tie-in to this M Crown use. And this was something that we got a lot of good feedback from the previous council member on. And it was something that really ordered the entire facade. Now, with regard to the building form and the building scale just in general, there was, when we first went into city planning, there was some question as to what the most appropriate scale was. And in light of the fact that there's not a lot here, there's not a lot on these 5 or 6 blocks, between Vanderbilt and in Bedford, it became clear that that displacement really wasn't an issue, because there wasn't a lot there. The amount of affordable housing that we'd be bringing in on these lots far surpassed the amount of a housing that was on the blocks to the south by itself. So we saw that we could propose some greater bulk, and we did a bunch of comparative analysis with similarly scaled streets in Manhattan and in downtown Brooklyn, and it became apparent that this was an appropriate bulk. Further, one thing that became very, very clear very quickly was that there was this thought that Vanderbilt was the natural demarcation point between the Pacific Park and downtown Brooklyn, but in fact, it's actually Washington, which is 1 block further east. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, I am very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for the applicant team on this application? Vice Chair Knuckles?
Thank you. I wanted to ask the architect, did you look at, in the course of studying density options, did you look at a possible C62A, which has been put forth by both the community board and I think more recently the borough president? What kind of configuration would that zoning classification yield, and specifically in terms of the number of units would that yield, if you know?
Yeah, sure. So the C62A was something that we looked at extensively in the beginning, and this was part of the comparative exercise. And there were 2 things that were remarkable. Number one was that you end up with a much blockier building, because it's 1.3 FAR less than the C63A, but you get a a 3-floor bump with that C63A versus the C62A. So what ends up happening is that 1.3 FAR is disproportionate to the amount of height that you get, which is to say that you could make thinner floor plates throughout the entire building and kind of soak it up high in a way which allows, for this more porous like orientation at the top. And if you notice, like for example, with Park Avenue, there's a pretty steady street wall between like 105 and 100 and like 25 feet, and you get the appearance of a lot of bulk. It feels very, very hefty. And with this extra height, this like lets us like attenuate the form more towards the top in a way which lets a lot more sky to the street. That was one thing. The other thing is it's 1.3 FAR yielded about 30 units less, which is I believe somewhere, I think it's about 10 units less affordable. And we did a study where we looked at the effect of C62A versus C63A along the entire corridor between Vanderbilt and Bedford. And what we saw was that the delta was about 1,000 units total across this entire span, and about 300 affordable units. So considering the amount of affordable units, it just seemed like it was a no-brainer to go for this extra density to set this tone, just because there's so much more like affordable units that we could bring to the market with it.
Do you?
Sorry. If I could just add with regards to the C62A discussion, particularly in light of the conversations with the community and more recently with the Brooklyn Borough President, the discussion wasn't necessarily around a flat-out reduction to C62A. It was whether or not a C63A with conditions would be a workable solution. And so there were discussions around levels of affordability, maybe shaving a floor to 2 floors potentially off the building. But having said that, the actual absolute envelope of a C63A was definitely considered in some of these interim approvals. So while Nick's is correct, we did look at that. We also looked at higher densities with most recently the Brooklyn Borough President.
And we have a couple of solutions actually, Rich. We have some that are 15 and also 16 floors. There was something which was also a little bit of like a handcuff with like regard to building efficiency, which was that we had to do an 8-foot wide street widening for both of these projects, sidewalk line, excuse me. So what this means is that we have to artificially kind of make it skinnier, and then that makes it taller. So what we came up with was at the second or third floors, basically cantilevering 8 feet, which is really not a huge deal, back out over the street, and then we could kind of fatten up that middle portion of the building. It yields a slightly different unit, and it yields a slightly different unit count, but in the end, we're able to basically have the same square footage of affordability, which seemed to be kind of what should be prioritized.
No, I just wanted to ask, did you have any massing studies reflecting a C62A
Yes. Yeah.
that you could share?
Can I share? I can share my screen, right? Give me a sec. I spend hours every week screaming in my office to store the files in the correct folders, and I'm the biggest offender. I have everything loosely gathered on my desktop.
You can submit those to
Yeah, let me
us as follow-up. That would absolutely be fine.
Okay, great.
I'd like to see them a side-by-side, obviously, comparison between what you're proposing and the variation of a C62A. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Levin.
Well, yes, Commissioner Knuckles essentially asked my question, but I have to say I find this a fascinating discussion, and Mr. Liberis, the degree to which you've thought about this and lay out the pros and cons in a thoughtful but humanly understandable way is really powerful. I would love to see the work you did. You mentioned that you did a comparative analysis of C63A and C62A along the entire corridor. And if that's something you could share with us too, I would really be interested in seeing it. I will note that Mr. LaBelle, you did a very elegant job of presenting the neighborhood context, but not showing the zoning that actually got put in place next door at 840, what is it? Yeah. And the C62A that is immediately adjacent to
Sure.
this site as a result of a council modification. So I think you heard my
Right.
question at the review session. Doesn't that sort of suggest a direction that we may be going in here? I think I understand you're not going to see it that way.
Well, yeah, you know, obviously, like you said, Commissioner Levin, it's a council modification, and I think that was in contemplation of a project. And you know, as the commission notes, the council, as long as they're within scope, is permitted to and does regularly modify rezonings. You know, what we were kind of persuaded with along really what amounts to a journey is at some point the Brooklyn office demonstrated to the commission why C63A and R9A equivalent was really appropriate for this frontage and the kind of the experience at the pedestrian level of the size of the buildings. You know, it's an opportunity here. We were involved in rezonings in this community district at R7A along a 70-foot wide street and at R7D along the intersection of two 70-foot wide streets. You're now presented with Atlantic Avenue, which is 120 feet wide. You know, to the idea of grading that up from an R7D to an R8A doesn't really carry the scope of what you're looking at in terms of whether or not this street, this frontage, this width can handle this density. So again, we're happy to submit materials and share those, but we still remain strongly rooted in the land use rationale as was offered by the department as to why R9A, C63A is appropriate.
Okay, well, I would say, while I appreciated the Brooklyn office's presentation about appropriate density on here, I don't know that I'm yet totally persuaded. These are issues about which there is considerable debate. I think the community board has offered us careful thought about context here, which is somewhat different than the way the department is seeing it. So the more information we have for fleshing this out, the better. So I'll be very interested in seeing the additional submissions on the comparative study. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. We would also note that to the extent that anyone wants to ask questions of Sandy Hornick, who's obviously well known to the commission, he is on the call and can address any particular questions about density.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, I thank you all for this team presentation. We'll move on to other testimony. I think we now have Peter Crashes again. Mr. Crashes here.
Hello, my keyed up. It's a little confusing. So we did, North Prospect Heights Association did submit a letter for both of these separate letters for both of these applications. So I'm not going to read exactly the same thing again. I'm just going to read a little bit of the first initial part and then maybe pick up on a couple of the loose ends here to the best I can. But I did want to just reiterate with this application, like the last, that North Prospect Heights Association is deeply concerned by the emergence of individual private ULURP applications for Atlantic Avenue and calling the City Planning Commission to reject them. Use of individual private applications to unlock development potential on Atlantic Avenue undercuts the community's leverage to develop a holistic plan that addresses an eventual near doubling of Prospect Heights' population. There are already 6,450 new units of housing approved by Atlantic Yard Pacific Park. The progression of proposed new developments on Atlantic Avenue will add thousands more residents, and the impact on infrastructure must be considered comprehensively. Consideration of individual applications also fails to address demographic changes. The department, sorry, I jumped. The implications of indirect displacement caused by the introduction of such a large number of new market rate units. These proposals should be rejected, and we ask our next city council member, borough president, and mayor to work with us on a better plan. I think it's because approval of these projects will complete the upzoning of much of Atlantic Avenue and Prospect Heights in the context in which you're giving greater density, creating a larger number of non-affordable units, and you are ushering in other words, increasing the number of impacts on the community without any kind of a plan to pull together. And I think that when the MCRAM was conceived, I think this goes back to about 2008 2018 that there was a letter signed by the then Borough President Adams, then Majority Leader Board 8. It included not just a neighborhood-wide rezoning, it had a density framework, and it defines some M-Crown uses, which were really primarily, honestly, not considered to be emphasized on the Atlantic Avenue sector, but much more in the internal blocks. What we're now doing is we're moving forward with an increase in the density of Atlantic Avenue with individual applications, and you're not giving the community the opportunity to have a really comprehensive conversation about what the priorities for these buildings ought to be, even if it's within the single framework of the building boundaries. But we're also talking again about each of these buildings being added one after the other without the leverage, with the leverage for the community being taken out of our hands. We will lose our leverage to actually pull all these city agencies together. So we're asking you again to reject these applications.
Thank you, Mr. Crashes. Are there any questions for Mr. Crashes? Okay, I don't see any, so thank you again. The next speaker is Kathy Iselin.
Kathy is not in the room.
Okay, then we will move to Jack Robinson.
Hello again. Like I said, I live at 1022 Pacific Street, and I forgot to mention that I'm a member of the CB8 Land Use Committee as well. Much of my neighborhood is zoned incorrectly for what's needed. I get that we need more housing and the neighborhood's going to change, and I love change. I'm also the executive director of the largest nonprofit art fair in New York, and I'm skeptical of the art plans of the 2 Atlantic Avenue proposals. And shouldn't we defer to the capability of the next administration? We are making major changes of how our neighborhood should be used. Representation that is now tasked with what the people have chose should be deciding. I believe the applicant should withdraw and resubmit under the new administration. Like I said, I'm a member of the CB8 Land Use Committee, a new one. It's been a challenging couple of months, but we care, and that's why we're here. Though my recent interactions with the Land Use Committee have seemed procedurally excessively complex, the comment chat function has been disabled during the meetings, leaving a lack of community transparency. The actual community that we live in leans toward the side of constraining construction. As a member, I think we should amplify our neighbors' voices. Infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. There's been no comprehensive plans on how the rest of the neighborhood works around these proposed towers. It seems like comprehensive neighborhood plan would be the way to make sure things function under, around, and above us. We want development, a plan development that keeps people and infrastructure in mind. Please do not favor this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Mr. Robinson. The next speaker is Kaya Kuhl.
Hi, commissioners again. I want to say something with respect to this project about the assessment of the C63 being appropriate. I respectfully disagree with the department's assessment here. I don't believe that there is a precedent anywhere in the city, actually, where a mid-block rezoning to an R9 equivalent abuts directly back to back with an R6B. So this has been, as has mentioned before, a late addition to the M-Crown framework. And So what we're seeing here is that a 17-story proposed tower is directly 60 feet away from an R6B, which, as you know, is 3 to 4 stories only. And so what typically happens in these situations, as far as I understand, is that there needs to be a transition. In fact, as I look out my window, I see that very thing, which is on the north side of Atlantic, where between a kind of historic brownstone district and Atlantic Avenue, the Atlantic Avenue lots are, I believe, R7A. I don't disagree that this should be affordable housing, but or housing in general, but I do urge you to consider dropping the density here, and also with an eye not to the very wide 124 feet and all the undulating and terraces that you're seeing in the renderings that create north-facing terraces, but also think about the neighborhood that, quite frankly, not just the properties directly abutting the neighborhood, the proposal can see, but as this sort of goes down the hill, it will be a very tall tower for impacting many surrounding buildings. Second, I want to again reiterate that this is the 4th proposal that you are reviewing within 4 months along a very small stretch, 3 blocks of Atlantic Avenue. And as you have heard, none of them found any significant impact through their EAS statements, yet you are adding over 2,000 units as per the various EASs with these rezonings to the stretch of Atlantic Avenue, where open space per resident is already 1/10 of what Plan NYC considers adequate, where Atlantic Avenue and adjacent streets have been subject to severe flooding during rain events last fall, and where we've just recently seen a wonderful proposal by Transportation Alternatives of what could happen on Atlantic Avenue to make it a safe corridor, but we need to think about this comprehensively with density. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Kuehl. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Then the next speaker is Gib Bocconi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks again to the commissioners. I am once again testifying on behalf of Brooklyn Community Board 8, and I will refer to my earlier testimony regarding the history of Brooklyn Community Board 8's M-Crown initiative. And once again, I will state that it is the board's desire to see a neighborhood rezoning that implements the M-Crown vision as the most effective way for redevelopment to benefit District 8, the borough, and the city. It is unusual for a community board in Brooklyn to request a residential upzoning. I'll again express disappointment on behalf of the board that we have not been able to make more progress with the Department of City Planning due to its objections about the mixed-use component of our proposal. And I'll point out that private applicants appear not to share the department's view that our vision is somehow uneconomical. In the present case, the community board has resolved to support these applications if the applicant enters into a binding commitment to provide a minimum of 4,700 square feet for light industrial uses consistent with the M-Crown vision, to offer required affordable housing under MIH option 3, and to limit building height to 15 stories. The board finds the greater density along Atlantic Avenue relative to the M-Crown vision is justified given the opportunity for light industrial use beyond what has been envisioned under the M-Crown resolution, and for deeply affordable housing in a community that continues to undergo intense gentrification and displacement. Finally, the board recommends lots 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16 be rezoned C62A, matching the zoning of lots 9 and 10 and better aligning with the density proposed for the block in the board's M-Crown resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bocconi. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, so thank you. The next speaker is Renzo Ramirez.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. Good afternoon, Chair Lamont and members of the commission. My name is Renzo Ramirez, and I am a member of 32BJ SEIU, here on behalf of the more than 85,000 32BJ members to express our strong support for this project. The developer Y&T Development has applied to build a new 15-story mixed-use building. We are pleased to announce that the developer has reached out early to make a credible commitment to provide prevailing wage jobs to the future building service workers at this site. We estimate that this rezoning will allow for the creation of new property service jobs and 42 affordable units. These jobs are typically filled by local members of the community, and because of this commitment, will pay family-sustaining wages, which help bring working families into the middle class. These apartments are needed for working people in Brooklyn. This commitment to good prevailing wage jobs will give opportunity for upward mobility, security, and dignity to working class families. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. We know that this development will continue to uphold the industry standard and provide opportunities for working families to thrive. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Emily Liu.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Emily Liu, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. PHNDC is a community membership-based civic organization that provides advocacy for neighborhood-wide issues on behalf of residents and businesses of Prospect Heights. We support a neighborhood-wide rezoning as contemplated in CB8's M-Crown proposal. We believe that M-Crown is the best strategy to attain the stated desires of the community for an equitable and logical development of areas of Prospect and Crown Heights historically zoned as manufacturing districts, in a manner that preserves diversity, avoids displacement, and encourages the creation of well-paying jobs for area residents without college degrees. We share the community board's frustration with the lack of progress on the implementation of M-Crown by the Department of City Planning. However, we also recognize that the applicant's proposal presents an opportunity to approve such private application in a manner that is consistent with the M-Crown framework. As such, PHNDC supports Community Board 8's recommendation that in lieu of the rezoning originally proposed by applicant, block 1122, lots 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16 be rezoned to a C6 2A district with development lots 21 and 26 zoned C6 3A as requested, and all lots mapped under MIH options 1 and 3. Our support of C6 3A is conditioned upon the applicant making a binding commitment to restrict use of a minimum of 4,700 square feet to light industrial use groups, to offer the required affordable apartments under MIH option 3, and to limit building height to 15 stories. Under MIH option 3, the applicant would create 42 permanently affordable apartments at an average of 40% of AMI. The inclusion of such deeply affordable housing will help promote social and economic diversity in Prospect Heights. Furthermore, the light industrial use restricted floor area will attract the type of businesses that will provide living wage skill building jobs. We believe the applicant's proposed development, as modified by the foregoing conditions, captures the sentiments and goals of M-Crown to address the need of more affordable housing, particularly at the lowest income bands, and more living wage jobs. We hope that this development will fit into a future neighborhood-wide rezoning consistent with M-Crown. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Liu? Thank you. Then the next speaker is Ella Levitt.
Ella is not in the room.
Okay. Thank you. Then the next speaker is Michael Rogers.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm speaking on behalf of the North Prospect Heights Association. Earlier in this hearing, I was happy to hear Commissioner Burney say that open space is an issue in Brooklyn that needs attention, because I think it's a very good argument for the kind of neighborhood-wide planning requested by Councilmember Hudson rather than spot zoning by private applicants. It's impossible, I think, to consider 870-888 Atlantic without looking at the elephant in the room, or rather the elephant just down the block, Pacific Park. Pacific Park itself is, of course, beyond the control of the city. And perhaps that's why, at least in the experience of those of us who live in the area, the city often ignores its impact. But it is a substantial impact, particularly in terms of density. When Pacific Park is fully built out, our neighborhood will end up with an historically high density, 636 people per acre. That's higher than any area in any of the 5 boroughs now. And in fact, it's above the historical high of 510 persons per acre, which was what the Lower East Side hit back in 1910. So open space follows from that. New York State, of course, sets the 2.5 acres per 1,000 people. The city average is 1.5 acres per 1,000 people. Already, the EAS for the study zone of this proposal says that there's a total of 0.19 areas of open space per 1,000. Well, what's interesting is with the full build out of Pacific Park, even though it will allegedly add 8 acres of privately owned public space, the amount of recreational space for the study area would be cut by 25%. It would drop to 0.15 acres per 1,000 people. And privately owned public spaces are not full replacements for public parks. They generally offer, less active recreation, shorter hours, greater restrictions on usage. So my conclusion is that meaningful open space is just one of the conditions that requires neighborhood-wide planning, but it's a very important one. The residents of very dense neighborhoods deserve open space, parks, gardens, recreational areas, and only the city can really make that possible. So thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Are there any questions from the commission? Thank you again for your testimony. The next speaker is Sarah Viner.
I haven't been eating that much.
Is Ms. Viner in the
Hi there.
room?
On the back end. Can you hear me?
Hi. Okay, yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I'm not an expert in this topic, but I am a resident, and I would like to echo the sentiments of many others, including Mr. Crashes and Ms. Kuehl, and suggest that city planning needs to prioritize the neighborhood-wide plan rather than approve individual spot rezoning applications and developing these kind of individual buildings. My 3 main concerns, simply put in layman's terms, the indirect displacement of residents by the consistent driving up of local rent from luxury or from non-affordable buildings like these. Affordable housing at 80% MIH is just simply no longer affordable to most people due to the way this neighborhood has been gentrified. The burden on the local infrastructure, including the already extremely overwhelmed C train, the local parks, the local schools, and most certainly car parking. As someone who actually lives in this neighborhood, I and any of my neighbors can tell you that anecdotal evidence tells us the environmental reviews that have been done are just simply inaccurate. And then incredibly important, the lack of safety of Atlantic Avenue that currently has no bike lanes and limited pedestrian safety precautions. There are consistent accidents that happen directly outside our doors. There needs to be a plan in place before huge buildings like these are put in. We absolutely need more housing and most importantly, more affordable housing. But these individual applications lack the wider vision we need to continue to build a neighborhood that actually works for its residents. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Viner? Okay, so I thank you for your testimony. The next speaker is Karen Kay.
Hi, sorry if you can't hear me, I have a COVID situation going on. So
we hear
I'm
you.
a resident here, and the building that's going to be built is going to be right up against our building here. So not knowing too much about this process, I've been listening in, and I'm just, I think, more confused than anything, because in the previous presentations, it was going to be 15 stories, and now today it's 17 stories again. So, I mean, I just think there needs to be like an overall plan as to how everything's going to be built. And, you know, when we were building this house, there's a retaining wall, right? And this 17-story building is going to be built right up against that. So, I mean, there's going to be damages to the property unless, you know, there's like some sort of, you know, building analysis. Even like right across the street from me, they're putting up a community center. And that's been halted because there's property damage to buildings across the street, not even up against it. And, you know, they had to stop it because there's a lawsuit there because of damages to the property. I just don't think that, you know, there's an overall concise plan on how this is supposed to work for the residents here, because, you know, with most people staying at home and, you know, right up against this new building, this now 17-story building, you know, most people are going to be home and then surrounded by darkness. Some buildings on the street are 3 stories, some are 2 stories. So it's very hard to see how this all fits in. I mean, if you know anything about the McDonald's area, and I've been in the neighborhood for 40 plus years. So when McDonald's was being built, there were actually two buildings that didn't want to sell to McDonald's. So they built around it, and it just looks really odd. So I'm guessing with these new buildings, this is the way the neighborhood's going to look, with this mishmash of, you know, rezoning things, which, I mean, if that's the way, I mean, everyone wants it to look, I guess that's the way it has to be. But, you know, I just think that, you know, with everything that's being proposed, and I haven't seen, and I know from the meetings that everyone's saying that they won't build without the permission of like the LIRR. These buildings are right above it. And I've seen in Pacific Park where, you know, the specific buildings that's going up, you can see the care that they're doing. They're putting like all these like cement and iron and stuff just to make it feasible so that, you know, you don't have a collapse when you put it, you know, put the building up. So, you know,
Ms. Kay, your time has expired.
Okay.
Your time is expired. We thank you for your testimony, and you certainly are encouraged, if you'd like, to submit any written testimony that you'd like. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. The final speaker I've signed up is Sarah Lazar.
Hi there. Yes, it's Sarah Lazar. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hi.
Great. My name is Sarah Lazar, and I'm here as a member of the Crown Heights Tenant Union. And I am also a member of Community Board 8 and a member of the Land Use Committee. So the Crown Heights Tenant Union has voted unanimously to recommend that the CPC reject all private rezoning applications along Atlantic Avenue under the current regime of ULURP and MIH. The recent and current applications that people have mentioned, in the space of 4 months, as well as the inevitable future ones that are coming, will all directly or indirectly displace tenants, and this is unacceptable. We believe that you should trust CHTU members on this, because as tenants, we're the ones most directly affected by this. And we're also the ones who are fighting in Crown Heights to prevent further displacement. And, we've had some wins along the way. From our founding, CHTU has opposed schemes like MIH that use the promise of affordable housing in order to push forward rezonings that incentivize the cycle of displacement and overcharge that we have been fighting throughout Crown Heights and beyond. Our members know from direct experience that when a speculative investor buys land in our neighborhood with the intention to rezone it and build luxury housing, our landlords see the likely influx of wealthy people, a change in market conditions next door, and they calculate that rents on their own property should increase as well. And time and again, we have seen them start jacking up the rents for unregulated tenants and start harassing the rent stabilized tenants, especially working class Black tenants, to push them out. And this was a legal but immoral path to deregulation until 2019, when we finally got rid of vacancy decontrol. But it continues to this day as an illegal but real path to deregulation. And almost every CHTU member who requests their rent history sees relatively little tenant turnover up until, the Atlantic Yards deal was struck. And then we see an accelerating churn of new tenants, illegal increases, unexplained departures, more tenants per unit, or loss of the unit entirely to vacancy decontrol or condo conversion. And collectively, these rent histories show the traces of disappearing households and the erosion of a community. And this is always more intense the closer you get to lots that are targeted for rezoning. And I know that it's you when I heard the representative for this developer say that there would be very little displacement from this particular project. It's frustrating because, as other people have mentioned, when you're addressing each of these alone. Sorry.
Your time.
Thank you.
Time has
Please,
expired.
we want a neighborhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Oh,
and
sorry,
your,
I have a question.
work.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Sorry. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Ms. Lazar, can you speak? You were talking a bit about the displacement that you've seen, particularly in the community before with developments. Can you speak a bit more about that and what it looks like? Like, for example, when the development is approved, what have you seen after in the process and how tenants are displaced?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Goodrich. So it's when you're only looking at a very limited area, there are thresholds of displacement that obviously seeker is set up to project a certain amount, but they only require analysis if they expect it to go beyond a certain threshold. And none of these formulas are perfect, but as a tenant organizing group, as a union of tenants, we've seen that when the application is coming down the road, the landlords, they do see the change in market conditions and they do expect what's coming. And part of this is increased hostility towards the existing tenants, the ones who have protections. The ones who don't have protections get their rents jacked up at the next lease renewal. We've been seeing a lot of that now because we're coming out of the pandemic, and also the eviction moratorium is coming to an end. And this is part of why we need good cause eviction. But so there's the harassment of rent stabilized tenants, and this was in order to get the vacancy bonus that went away in 2019. But the harassment continues to this day. I mean, especially in the area of northern Crown Heights, there have been several instances just on Dean Street alone of landlords, calling the cops on their tenants, especially the working class ones, especially the Black ones. There are also buildings where units have been warehoused. I know of a specific building near the eastern end of the proposed M-Crown district where Renaissance Realty has pushed out half of the tenants of a building. And I mean, the conditions in the hallways are just, it's amazing that the tenants who are still there have been able to hang on. But they've been warehousing it because they're expecting to do a condo conversion eventually. And, each individual building, you might think it's just the individual landlord. But when you see this happening on a neighborhood-wide scale, at a certain point, you have to think there's a lack of real planning happening. And a lack of planning almost feels like a plan to just let people be displaced. And the Department of City Planning's their own study of the area showed that the M-Crown area had lost 11,000 Black people in the last decade. That's what they saw from the census. And at a certain point, I mean, how much more is going to be acceptable? How much more are we willing to tolerate? How much more can you see without saying there needs to be a plan? Somebody needs to do something, and leaving it up to individual developers to come up with the plan for a neighborhood. I mean, developers have their own set of incentives, and I'm sure that, as individuals, they're perfectly nice people, but they're not able to, they have a certain set of incentives that don't include the retention of existing people in the neighborhood, that don't include tending to and maintaining the affordability a neighborhood, and preventing the erosion and killing off of a community.
Thank you.
Sorry, I
No, thank
care
you.
about
That was
this.
very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Laser. At this point, I would just ask whether or not there is anyone else present who has not signed up but would wish to speak on this item.
There are no further speakers on this item in our attendee column or on the.
Okay, so then thank you. Thank you. Then I will say that this hearing is closed. And then I'll ask Mr. Secretary, is there any other business before the commission today?
No, Chair Laramont, there is no official business before the commission. However, there is a brief public message that I would like to make to our audience, if I may.
I think Commissioner Goodridge still has a hand raised for a question, though.
Oh,
I
I'm
just
sorry.
had a
Miss Goodridge, you have another question?
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I should just jump in. But my quick question was, what's the next step for the East 660 Fordham Road? I'd like to know.
We will have a post-hearing follow-up at the next review session and work to get the answers to the questions that were asked.
Is there a date for the review session or the hearing? Yeah. Or that'll be determined
What
later?
is the wife?
We do have a deadline. It is February 18th, I believe, for that particular project. But we will figure out a vote date sort of based on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There'll be you'll know in advance.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, Edwin, please, Mr. Secretary, go on.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, Chair Laramont. For those of you who were unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal through DCP's webpage or by mailing your comment to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271.
Thank you. Okay, then I will just say that this remote meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time. Bye-bye.
Good night.
So long. See you next time.
Take care.